Chapter 13:18. Is there no end to this? Lin was completely dumbstruck upon seeing this. First, one snow mountain after another came crashing down, then 2 snow mountains, and now 5 snow mountains were crashing down on them at once. Did they have to do this? Most importantly, no one knew where the snow mountains had come from, who had thrown them, why they were so powerful, and why they were crashing down on them. All of the students in the school area had yet to be evacuated. Lin gritted his teeth and was just about to unleash his eternal night technique with his origin energy of the netherworld. At this moment, 5 divine lights suddenly flashed through the sky. They were as vast as the heavenly might and as dazzling as the sun. The celestial Dharch, Emperor Ziwei, Emperor Tian Huang, Emperor Chongqing, and Emperor Qing Hua all appeared at the same time to face the 5 oncoming snow mountains. Bam! 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 An earth-shattering collision erupted. The 5 emperors of the celestial court unleashed their most powerful physical attacks at the same time to knock the 5 snow mountains off course. All of them unleashed the same method upon seeing Wang Xianyu's attack. Our celestial court is no pushover like the snow maidens. Do you want to die? This is the territory of the celestial court. You can't do whatever you want here. The emperors roared in unison as they unleashed extremely terrifying auras as they looked up into the distance. Even a Tao integration stage super mighty figure would be scared witless by the combined might of the 5 emperors of the celestial court. The space in the distance twisted and warped, and a figure gradually began to appear. It was both real and illusory, like the wind and the clouds. Its figure was tall and majestic, like a god descending into the world. Its feet stepped on the earth, and its head was in the blue dome of heaven. A divine ring that resembled a flowing wind continuously revolved above its head, growing and multiplying. It was far too tall, and it was countless feet tall. This was a being that all living beings had to look up to. It was as if it represented the entire heavens. All of the mighty figures forgot to breathe upon seeing this. It was as if doing anything would be disrespectful to the being before them. Many of the students were unable to withstand the boundless divine might and had already collapsed to the ground. The celestial Thearcha's expression shifted drastically upon seeing this, and he harumphed coldly as his power of the divine Tao instantly spread through heaven and earth. Kacha, the existence with its head in the sky and its feet on the ground scattered like clouds and mist. The aura instantly dissipated. Those with good eyesight would be able to see a 2-meter-tall humanoid figure in the distance. It didn't have any facial features, only a pair of golden eyes. Its body was still translucent and as white as jade. It was extremely gentle and calm, but the flowing wind divine ring on its head made one's heart beat inexplicably. Who are you? The celestial Dharch wore a grave expression. That strange existence raised its head, its golden eyes looking at everything in front of it indifferently. The wind died down. Everything became quiet. The teachers and students continued to retreat into the distance. Everyone knew that this was the calm before the storm. If they didn't leave now, they really wouldn't be able to leave. Lin and Su Xiaolan also wanted to retreat. They didn't have the right to interfere in a battle between Tao integration stage super mighty figures. Just as he was about to flee, Lin noticed that the existence standing quietly in the void in the distance seemed to be looking at him. My name is Feng, an extremely ethereal yet extremely pleasant voice sounded. It was impossible to discern the gender of this voice, but it was very neutral yet very comforting. Feng? The celestial Thearcha's brows furrowed. He had never heard of such a person on this continent. Could this be a Hall of Creation Windwalker? No, there was too much of a disparity between the two of them. If a Hall of Creation Windwalker dared to come here, the 5 emperors would be able to beat it into an idiot without any hesitation. That's right, I am the wind that can sweep up 10,000 mountains. The existence spread open a hand, and a small snow mountain appeared in midair before being lifted up by a peculiar gust of wind. A theory appeared in the 5 emperors' minds. Perhaps the extremely peculiar protective barrier around the snow mountain was bestowed upon the snow mountain by the wind in that mysterious being's hand. It can even keep out or engulf the power of the divine Tao. What kind of creature is it? What should we do? Should we attack together? Wait, it said it's the wind. Could it be? The 5 emperors were all extremely cautious in the face of an unknown being. Right at this moment, the Wind Walker had already hurled the small snow mountain in its hand. The small snow mountain expanded in the wind and soon became a divine mountain over 100,000 feet tall. It was as if the entire continent were crashing down upon the Xiaoxian United University campus. All the students and teachers were dumbstruck. This snow mountain was on a completely different level from the previous snow mountain. If the snow mountain really were to fall, not only would the campus be razed to the ground, even the entire floating continent of the university would be shattered. The 5 emperors and Wang Xianyu's expressions shifted drastically as they hurtled toward the snow mountain. Knock the snow mountain off the floating continent. Everyone, go in that direction. The 6 Tao integration stage super mighty figures unleashed all of their physical attacks at the same time to crash into one side of the snow mountain. I am the wind, I am also the god, and I am also the heavens. The living being that was as white as jade slowly spread open its hands, and a gust of wind appeared out of nowhere before accumulating on the snow mountain. The 6 Tao integration stage super mighty figures felt as if they had crashed into a sponge, and their energy was quickly being depleted. No! Emperor Ziwei's eyes widened. The towering divine mountain crashed through Xiaoxian United University's array formation and descended from the sky. If this continued, even if the students managed to escape from the school area, they would still be smashed into smithereens by the shockwaves of the collision. The celestial Thearcha's divine Tao merged with heaven and earth, and his voice boomed like thunder. Sacrifice all of the power of the school protection formation. Fortify everything. Rumble, the formation that was originally used to protect the students quickly merged with every inch of the ground, causing every inch of the ground to glow with divine light. The hardness of the ground instantly increased by hundreds of times. In that instant, the celestial Tharch changed his train of thought. Since there was no way to stop the fall of the snow mountain, then he would do everything in his power to stabilize the earth so that it could withstand the impact of the snow mountain. The divine mountain fell. Its might was world-shaking. Anlin and Su Xiaolan quickly escaped from the sky. The evacuation of the students in the school district was completed under the efforts of the teachers. They were all out of range of the divine mountain. But that doesn't mean it's safe. It was just like when a planet crashed into Earth. Earth wouldn't die, but the living beings on it would most likely suffer a catastrophe and become extinct. Bang! A violent collision ensued, and it was as if heaven and earth had been torn apart. Shockwaves proliferated in a ring-shaped manner as gale-force winds swept through for several hundred kilometers. All of the surrounding trees were uprooted and swept into the sky. All of the teachers stood in front of the evacuated students and did their best to withstand the shockwaves of the impact. What was a little surprising to Anlin was that after the power of the spell formation was infused into the floating continent, it did not shatter after taking the divine mountain's attack head-on. Instead, it only caved in slightly after absorbing the force of the divine mountain's crash. It was exactly because of this that the students who hadn't managed to get far were able to survive. The mysterious being in the distance remained completely unfazed upon seeing this. Instead, it spoke in an indifferent voice, "Let's destroy the celestial court in order to exterminate the human race." The 5 emperors instantly exploded with rage upon hearing this. Destroy the celestial court? What a bold statement. Let's go! *CK it. No matter who it is, it must die today. Kill it. He had even threatened to destroy the heavenly court, so how could the 5 emperors, who had been hesitant before, hesitate any longer? They immediately pounced toward the mysterious being in the distance. Chapter 13:19. Unlin escaped from the battlefield with his evil-slaying sword in hand. Little Xie, what did you just say was that layer of power protecting the snow mountain? How were you able to break through it? Little Xie was silent for a moment before replying. That power is actually a little similar to the power of laws, and it's not just a simple power of laws. Instead, it's the power of laws of the Tai Chu continent, the center of this world. In other words, it's the power of the heavens. Unlin's expression shifted drastically. Suddenly, he turned his head to look at the mysterious, translucent white jade-like existence. The 5 emperors were charging toward the mysterious being, but the mysterious being was looking at him. Its golden eyes met the black and white eyes for a second time. Unlin could almost see a hint of a smile in its eyes. Be careful, Celestial Dharch. It's very likely the self-consciousness of the representative of the heavenly Tao and the ruler of the heavenly wind god. Don't use any wind-type spell techniques. Unlin yelled. The heavenly wind god? The celestial Thearka's expression shifted slightly. He had once heard from Unlin that the heavenly sea god, the ruler of the heavenly sea god, was a top secret of the heavenly court. Now that the ruler of the heavenly wind god had arrived, it would not be an exaggeration to refer to him as the heavenly wind god, and he was truly the heavenly wind god. In the Tao of wind, it was a god, a supreme being. What the f*ck? Didn't they say that representatives of the heavenly Tao can't enter the Tai Chu continent? Emperor Ziwei murmured to himself. The hole in the sky is becoming more and more terrifying. It's not like you don't know that. Emperor Tian Huang wore a cold expression as a pair of golden lightning wings appeared on his back. When the evil dragons of the ancient Tai Chu dragon realm invaded this world, the heavenly Tao underwent another change. Now, the foreign tribes outside the ancient Tai Chu realm are also eyeing this place with hostility, so it's no surprise that something like this has happened. The celestial Dharch spoke with a grave expression. As he spoke, the 5 emperors' power of the divine Tao was already sweeping toward the heavenly wind god. Any one of the emperors could reduce the ground within a radius of over 50 kilometers to rubble. Now that all 5 of them had unleashed their full power, the entire sky twisted and crumbled. The heavenly wind god waved a hand in the face of the oncoming attack. Bam! It was as if the air was compressed and then exploded. All of the power of the divine Tao before him was pulverized by a single palm. To be able to destroy the combined attack of the 5 emperors so easily, this caused their expressions to change drastically. Don't be afraid. The fact that it's trying to defend itself against our attacks proves that our attacks can actually pose a threat to it, the celestial Dharch said in a calm voice. The other great monarchs understood this as well, and they all became alert. Upon hearing the celestial Thearka's words, a mouth suddenly appeared on the heavenly wind god's featureless head, upon which it chuckled. An ethereal and pleasant voice reverberated in the air. Even ants feel pain when they bite. I've waved my hand to chase them away, but they think I'm afraid of their attack? Do you still think you can win? It was quite clear that the heavenly wind god was already viewing the 5 emperors as ants. There was a flash of anger in the 5 great emperors' hearts. However, they quickly suppressed their anger. If the heavenly wind god is a manifestation of the heavenly Tao, then it definitely wouldn't view us like this. There must be a reason why it's doing this, and that is to infuriate us and make us lose our minds. The celestial Thearka's expression became more and more solemn as he spoke. Right at this moment, translucent snow suddenly began to fall from the sky. It's snowing? The teachers and students who were fleeing into the distance saw the crystal-clear and beautiful snowflakes dancing in the air like snow fairies. For a moment they seemed to have forgotten all their negative emotions, as if they were in a worry-free land. Snow can purify all impurities, and wind will take away all of your worries. The heavenly wind god flicked a finger toward the massive snowy mountain that had crashed into the teaching area, upon which a light breeze blew for over 500 kilometers. Come forth, powerful beings of the foreign realm, and cleanse all evil from this world. Whoosh, a blue, rhomboid enchantment barrier suddenly appeared, encompassing the entire Xiaoxian United University continent within it. All of the most powerful beings of the heavenly court are here. Is it trying to take us all down in one fell swoop? Emperor Ziwei's expression was extremely dark. He opened his hand, and a small white shuttle appeared in his palm. All of the students and teachers were initially planning to escape from this continent and head toward the Celestial Court or other places in the Kingdom of the Nine States, but they were instantly dumbstruck by the sight of the blue, rhomboid enchantment barrier. At this moment, the massive divine mountain suddenly began to tremor. The gargantuan mountain was split in half down the middle. Within the mountain, there was a black gate of light that was exuding powerful spatial fluctuations. A series of humanoid beings with white scales all over their bodies rushed out from the gate of light with all types of weapons in their hand. All of their bodies were similar to humans, but there were white scales all over their bodies, their hair was snowy white, and their eyes were golden. Kill all of the humans. So this is the center of the universe, the Tai Chu continent? It really is an alluring paradise. This is going to be ours from now on. Kill them all. The living beings roared as they charged toward the students and teachers in the distance. For some reason, Unlin was reminded of the ancient heavenly fiend Celestial leading a horde of demonic creatures into the West Sea in an attempt to wipe out the human race. They were also beings of the heavenly gods, and they were also beings from other realms who had invaded this world. However, the last time they appeared in the West Sea, they didn't even get to see any humans. This time, however, they had descended upon the core region of the human race, the Celestial Court. Gale force winds began to howl. The beautiful snowflakes dancing in the sky instantly transformed into a lethal blizzard that froze all things to death. In the sky above, at the edge of the enchantment barrier, the heavenly wind god had opened the gate to the other world. The 5 emperors were both shocked and enraged, and they all summoned their respective magic treasures. They had to kill the heavenly wind god as soon as possible. Otherwise, the students of the United University of Cultivation would definitely not be able to hold on. Emperor Qinghua waved a sleeve through the air, and a small, dark golden bell appeared. The ancient bell chimed in the air, as if it were a sound that would last for eternity. This was the intermediate rank divine tool, the ancient bell of dusk. The chime of the bell could last for 10,000 years. This was a time-type offensive divine tool, and it could be said to be the most freakish power it possessed. It could target all things, and there was almost no one who could defend against this attack. Emperor Qinghua's power of the divine Tao fused into the bell of dusk, and the power that seeped through the air caused all of the plants on the ground to quickly wilt and turn to dust. That's right, there was nothing in this world that could stand up to the passage of time. As time passed by, everything would be reduced to dust. You can die now. Emperor Qinghua waved a hand through the air, and the bell of dusk flew toward the heavenly wind god, upon which a series of ancient bell chimes reverberated through the air. A dark, yellow divine Tao light expanded rapidly in conjunction with the bell of dusk before instantly enshrouding the heavenly wind god. A faint smile appeared on Emperor Qinghua's face. Soul formation stage powerful beings wouldn't even be able to last a second in the face of his divine Tao light, and even return to void stage mighty figures would die within a minute. So, how long can you last? Emperor Qinghua looked at the heavenly wind god and asked this question in his heart. Chapter 1320. The heavenly wind god was enshrouded within a dark yellow divine Tao light. The divine tool, the bell of dusk, revolved around the heavenly wind god as it tolled for 10,000 years at a time. Even a Tao integration stage super mighty figure would quickly age and die in the face of the power of the bell of dusk if they didn't put up any resistance. Emperor Qinghua activated the power of the divine tool with all his might. The heavenly wind god looked at Emperor Qinghua with a confused expression before cocking its head to the side. What are you doing? Emperor Qing Hua's expression shifted slightly. A while had passed, but the heavenly wind god didn't seem to have been affected in the slightest. A smile suddenly appeared on the heavenly wind god's face. "Oh, I get it now. You want me to age?" It opened its hand, and a wisp of white wind appeared over its palm. "You don't seem to understand the meaning of my existence. I am the heavens, and the heavens are eternal and will never age. You want to use the power of time to age or even destroy the heavens. How naive." The white wind vortex had already left its palm as it spoke. Whoosh! The wind vortex sliced through Emperor Qing Hua's power of the divine Tao like a hot knife through butter. Emperor Qing Hua's heart jolted as he hurtled back in retreat. However, the edge of the wind vortex was like a sharp blade that sliced through heaven and earth. It was so fast that even Qing Hua was unable to react to it, and it covered a distance of over 50 kilometers in the blink of an eye. Even the dancing snowflakes in the sky were wiped away. Whoosh! Blood splattered through the air. Emperor Qing Hua's divine body, which he had cultivated for countless years, was sliced cleanly in half by the wind vortex. His expression was extremely haggard, as if even his consciousness had been severely wounded, and his entire body plummeted from the sky. "Qing Hua! F*CKU, I'll kill you!" Emperor Ziwei and Emperor Tian Huang roared at the same time. A small silver shuttle flew out of Emperor Ziwei's hand, upon which a brilliant divine light erupted forth, seemingly capable of piercing through all things in this world, and it crashed into the blue enchantment barrier, causing it to tremor violently. This was the intermediate rank divine tool, the Milky Way realm-piercing shuttle. At its peak, it could even pierce through 2 worlds. And now, Emperor Ziwei was injecting all of his power into the Milky Way realm-piercing shuttle. Shattering the void was just a piece of cake. Now, it even had the power to pierce through 2 worlds. Emperor Tian Huang tossed out a piece of artwork from his storage ring, upon which were depicted 9 peculiar beings. Even though their appearances were peculiar, it didn't disguise their paramount majesty in the slightest. Holy Mystic Map. Summon the myriad lightning heavenly sage. Emperor Tian Huang made a hand seal, and the power of the lightning divine Tao erupted violently before merging into the scroll. A dragon-like monster with 8 pairs of wings and 4 lightning claws leaped out of the scroll. As soon as it appeared, a sea of lightning instantly filled the sky. Divine light illuminated the world, as if the most sacred of lightning techniques had descended into the world. This monster, known as the Myriad Lightning Sage, let loose an almighty roar before pouncing toward the heavenly wind god. On one side was a silver shuttle that could pierce through 2 worlds, while on the other side was a monster imbued with paramount holy might. The heavenly wind god was finally forced to adopt a defensive stance. It patted its body with its hand, and a transparent barrier made of wind appeared on its body. All of the emperors were struck by a sense of familiarity. This barrier was most likely the same one that had crashed into Xiaoxian United University. The Milky Way realm-breaking shuttle brought with it an endless white river of stars. It was as if the Milky Way had pierced through the sky. The power of the stars was vast and resplendent, illuminating the entire world. Its sharpness even pierced through the void, as if it wanted to pierce through the entire sky. Crack, crack, crack. The spear struck the heavenly wind god's barrier, upon which an extremely sharp screeching sound erupted. On the other side, the lightning heavenly sage was hurtling through the air at an extremely fast speed. Just a casual swipe of his 4 lightning claws was enough to pulverize thousands of mountains into dust. Now that his claws had struck the heavenly wind god's barrier, they were unable to penetrate even a single inch, as if they had struck the hardest object in the world. The heavenly wind god's golden eyes flashed, and it looked up at the attack that was powerful enough to kill a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. A disdainful expression appeared on its face. "Don't waste your energy. I'm the wind of the heavenly Tao. The defensive restriction that I've set up with wind represents the will of the heavens. No one can break through it?" The purple star was able to puncture a massive hole in the heavens, but we can also destroy your so-called will of the heavens. Emperor Ziwei let loose an almighty roar as countless stars flashed through his eyes. The Milky Way realm-piercing shuttle began to tremor violently as the power behind it continued to climb. The heavenly wind god's expression darkened slightly. The heavens had no emotions, but the will of the representatives of the heavenly Tao possessed some special attribute. The divine halo above the heavenly wind god's head finally began to glow with a peculiar light. It extended its pristine hands toward the air, which began to swirl like a vortex of water. Break through! A gel-like tornado suddenly appeared. An extremely enormous power carried a paramount command as it twisted and twisted the Milky Way realm-piercing shuttle and the lightning heavenly sage's attacks before absorbing their power like a stream of water before disintegrating it like the wind. The lightning heavenly sage let loose a wail of anguish as his body was torn to shreds by the tornado. The silver shuttle's power also dissipated in that instant as it was flung into the air by the wind. No, that barrier is still too tough. Emperor Tian Huang exclaimed with shock on his face. Due to the backlash from the spell technique, his body had been damaged, and blood was flowing from the corners of his lips. At this moment, Emperor Ziwei turned his gaze toward another direction. There was a white-robed man there. He knew that not long ago, when the snow mountain had flown toward them, that man had managed to slice through that seemingly indestructible barrier with a single sword strike. At this moment, several thousand powerful beings had already poured out from the spatial gate within the divine mountain. All of them were extremely powerful. Their white scales made them virtually invulnerable, and they could use all types of peculiar spell technique. Ha ha! Ants of this world, have a taste of the terror of the wind demons. One powerful being after another pounced toward the students with sinister smiles on their faces. The Tao Body stage students unleashed a relentless barrage of spell techniques upon the wind demons, but they were unable to break through their indestructible scales. The more powerful ones were only able to inflict some light wounds on their bodies at most. It was quite clear that these wind demons were all at or above the spirit-nurturing stage. As expected, they're all trash. Puny ants like them don't deserve to live in such a good world. Kill them all. Cruel smiles appeared on the wind demons' faces as they pulled out all types of weapons. They were already less than 100 meters away from the tens of thousands of students. At this moment, a man in a flowing white robe appeared before the students. The man's appearance was very sudden, but none of the wind demons paid him any heed. If they had paid attention, they would have discovered that all of the students' expressions had changed from anxiety and horror to undisguised fanaticism and reverence. The wind demons were still charging forward in a frenzy, and they could already envision themselves chopping up all of the trash before them. All the way until the white-robed man unleashed a sword projection that extended for several dozen kilometers. Only then did they suddenly realize that they were the real trash. The inky black sword projection obscured the heavens and engulfed all things. The several thousand wind demons were like a joke in the face of this attack. No matter how they struggled, they were unable to escape the fate of being engulfed. The sword projection disappeared. Just a few seconds ago, the outsiders were still rampaging, but now, not a single one was left. All of them had been killed. More wind demons began to charge through the spatial gate. Charge! Kill all of the trash in this world, ha! The wind demons raised their weapons and chortled with glee. They then faltered upon seeing the empty scene before them. Huh? Where's our tribe spirit? Unlin wielded his evil-slaying sword with a smile on his face. You mean those few thousand noobs from before? I killed them all. Chapter 1321. All of the wind demon powerful beings were dumbstruck. Several thousand wind demon powerful beings had been wiped out in the blink of an eye? Did it have to be that insane? Are you going to gather enough people first, or are you going to charge at me? And Lin stood with his sword in hand as he spoke in a cold voice. The few dozen wind demon powerful beings looked at each other and didn't say anything. However, they all turned around and charged back toward the gate. Gasp! All of the teachers and students drew a sharp intake of breath. They were just preparing for a bloody battle, but they were all dumbstruck by this scene. They ran away just like that? God enforced back the wind demon powerful beings with a single sword strike. Bad *SS. That's awesome. How can classmate Enlin be so cool? Emperor Qing Hua has been severely wounded, and the situation is not looking good. This is the epicenter of the battle. Students with low cultivation bases, get out of here as soon as possible in order to avoid being caught up in the battle. The teachers weren't very optimistic about the current situation, and they were still evacuating the students. They were all prodigies who had yet to mature, so they definitely couldn't die here. Several dozen return to void stage mighty figures had already gathered outside the blue rhombus enchantment barrier. They were all the most powerful beings of the celestial court. This sudden calamity had the fate of the celestial court at stake, so no mighty figure was willing to stay out of this. Even the celestial court's war god Yang Jian, who was in seclusion in a mystic realm, and palace leader Chang Yi, who was in the midst of her Dao integration stage battle, were all gathered here. One earth-shattering spell technique after another crashed into the blue rhombus enchantment barrier. However, the enchantment barrier set up by the heavenly wind god was impregnable. It didn't even have a single crack on it, let alone being broken. All of the immortals were struck by despair upon seeing this. It's over, Emperor Qing Hua has been severely wounded. Just one attack was able to destroy the combined attacks of Emperor Ziwei and Emperor Tian Huang. What kind of terrifying being is this? Apparently, it is the representative of the heavenly Tao and represents the will of the heavens. The will of the heavens? Could it be that the disaster that the purple star has caused is finally going to erupt? There is no doubt that this is a battle against the entire human race. The immortals all wore grim expressions, but they still persisted in bombarding the barrier, hoping that with their unremitting efforts, they could blast open even a small crack. That group of students is also in danger. We have to go and save them. Hiss. Enlin is so strong, as expected of the god of war of the celestial court. If the heavenly wind god doesn't attack the students, I feel like the students will be safe with Enlin protecting them. A celestial immortal exclaimed upon seeing Enlin's sword strike. Chang Yi's robe fluttered as she stood in front of the immortals. Even though she did not move, she was still as beautiful as a painting. She looked at the white-clothed figure inside the barrier, and the corners of her mouth could not help but hang a faint smile, and she nodded slightly. With Enlin around, Susu's safety could be guaranteed. His top priority was still to battle the heavenly wind god. Yang Jian wielded an elementary tier divine artifact, the trident divine halberd, wore an immortal artifact, the true phoenix gilded boots, and wore an immortal artifact, the soaring universe soaring heavens battle armor. Just by standing in the void, the formless battle intent that he inadvertently released was enough to make any cowardly person faint. He opened his heavenly eye, which was supposed to be able to see through all things, and stared at the blue, rhomboid enchantment barrier in an attempt to find a flaw. True Lord Erlang, how is it? Celestial Immortal Yu Ding asked in an urgent voice. Yang Jian's brows furrowed slightly. There is the power of laws within this enchantment barrier, and it's not just a simple law. It's a law imbued with the will of the heavens. The will of the heavens? Even though all of the immortals were mentally prepared, they still couldn't help but let loose cries of surprise. They had thought about facing all types of powerful enemies, but never would they have thought that they would have to oppose the heavens one day. This was truly going to defy the natural order. So what if it's the will of the heavens? As long as we're powerful enough, we can even slay the heavens. Just as all of the immortals were feeling extremely pressured, a pleasant yet encouraging voice sounded beside their ears, causing all of the immortals to shudder. All of the immortals turned toward the source of the voice to discover a pristine white ball of fur flapping its intricate wings in the air. It pouted with a solemn expression on its adorable little face, as if it really was going to slay the heavens. Come, man can conquer the heavens. Let's slay this accursed heavens. The adorable white pet roared with fervor and passion. All of the immortals. It was none other than Shuizhantian, Dabai, and the others. Many of the immortals were well aware of Shuizhantian's personality, so they naturally ignored him and continued to look on at the battle taking place within the enchantment barrier with anxious expressions. Within the enchantment barrier. After blocking the attacks from the two emperors, the heavenly wind god casually extended a palm, upon which a transparent palm of wind broke through several dozen of Emperor Ziwei's defensive spell techniques before slamming him down onto the floating continent, where over 100 of the mountains on the continent were razed to the ground. PFFF. Emperor Ziwei threw up a mouthful of blood, which was intermingled with some internal organs. The heavenly wind god had only unleashed one more attack, and it had severely wounded another emperor. All of the immortals outside the enchantment barrier were trembling with fear. One had to realize that even among Tao integration stage super mighty figures, these emperors were all quite powerful. However, they couldn't even wound the heavenly wind god before being reduced to such a pitiful state. Their opponents could no longer be described as just powerful. This was an opponent that didn't make sense at all. The heavenly wind god raised a hand, and was just about to slam Emperor Tian Huang into the ground as well. Emperor Tian Huang immediately unleashed his lightning flash divine technique upon seeing this, and his body transformed into a bolt of lightning that flashed through the air. In a single second, he had changed directions over 10,000 times. The heavenly wind god's hand faltered, as if it didn't know where to start. All of the immortals finally saw hope. That representative of the heavenly Tao doesn't seem to be able to keep up with Emperor Tian Huang's speed? It's not invincible. That's right, it does have a weakness. In terms of speed, Emperor Tian Huang is superior to it. That's the advantage of being an emperor. Right at this moment, a smile suddenly appeared on the heavenly wind god's face. It splayed open its hands before pressing them down onto the ground. Boom. In that instant it was as if the heavens had collapsed. A terrifying power fell from the sky, encompassing a radius of over 50 kilometers. Boundless power crashed down with dazzling divine might, and the earth instantly caved in. Emperor Tian Huang was in the process of evading and waiting for an opportunity to attack, but he was completely unable to evade such a massive power, and his body was forced into the ground by the abrupt power. Wind is omnipresent. Heaven encompasses everything. How are you going to evade my attack? The heavenly wind god raised its head with a cold expression on its face. All of a sudden, the heavenly wind god sensed a power that enshrouded the entire heaven and earth. A black formation appeared on the ground, instantly engulfing the sun. The formation was massive and complex, and its Tao realm was so high that one couldn't even see the end of it. This was a formation at the pinnacle of the Tao integration stage. It was imbued with the most profound power of annihilation, as if it were going to engulf all things. A man stepped through the air. Thank you for buying time for me. The heaven-engulfing formation has been fully activated. So what? I, Emperor Chongqing, am going to engulf it today. Chapter 1322. Emperor Chongqing was a Tao integration stage super mighty figure and the #1 spell formation master in the Kingdom of the Nine State. The 4-9 Immortal Sect Protection Formation, the 99-fold Extreme Heavenly Formation, which was able to force Lu Mingxian into retreat, had been created by Emperor Chongqing. The sky-engulfing formation that he had unleashed with all his might had a very cheesy name, but it was the true trump card of his sect. This was the culmination of his entire life's work in order to unleash his most powerful killing technique in a moment of life and death. He had created this formation in order to deal with strong enemies. Even if it was the heavens, he would be able to devour them. Would they be afraid of it? However, what he didn't think was that the sky engulfing formation really was going to be used to engulf the heavens. The inky black formation exuded the most powerful power of annihilation. It could engulf living beings, it could engulf space, it could engulf light, it could engulf everything within the range of the formation. The heavenly wind god's body began to tremble uncontrollably in that instant. The sky engulfing formation was like a gargantuan abyssal mouth that could engulf all things, and it drew closer and closer to the heavenly wind god. Even the space around the formation was sucked in and engulfed by the formation like liquid. The heavenly wind god tried to shift its position, but to its surprise, its body was completely immobilized by a terrifying suction force. Your protective barrier is indeed very powerful, but my formation can engulf you first before slowly digesting you. Emperor Chongqing held a crimson carving brush in his hand before inscribing one divine symbol after another into the formation. All of the immortals outside the enchantment barrier were extremely unsettled by the sight of the all-engulfing formation within the enchantment barrier. It was like an invincible black hole baring its fangs to engulf all things, striking everyone with a sense of despair. They had no doubt that if they were to face that formation head-on, they would most likely be sucked into it and reduced to dust in less than a second. The heavenly wind god's body slowly approached the formation, having clearly been affected by the power of the sky engulfing formation. A wind barrier that was imbued with the power of laws didn't mean that it was invincible. This was just like how a snowy mountain could be smashed off course through physical means even with the power of laws enshrouding it, provided that the power of laws was powerful enough. The heavenly wind god looked at the approaching formation, and a divine light erupted from the divine halo above its head as it extended a golden finger. Rings of wind appeared on her translucent jade-like arms. Every time a ring of wind appeared, the power accumulated at her fingertips would increase by a notch. After accumulating over 100 rings of wind, she finally pointed her finger at the array that was pouncing towards her. Gold Origin Battle Wind. Golden wind gushed out from his fingertips. In the dark space of the great formation, it was like a ray of sunlight piercing through the darkness, piercing towards the sky, devouring great formation with endless fighting spirit and a sharp light that could pierce through everything. Trying to swallow the sky? He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. At that moment, the heavenly wind god seemed to have transformed into an invincible war god. Battle intent surged from its body, and it was as if it were looking down on all other living beings. The formation was capable of devouring everything in its path, and it was rapidly whittling away at the power of the Golden Origin Battle Winds. However, the Golden Origin Battle Wind was like a sharp knife, piercing toward the core of the spell formation at an extremely fast speed. Boom! The golden wind pierced through the all-engulfing formation, leaving a golden trail in its wake as it pierced through heaven and earth before reaching the blue enchantment barrier. Emperor Chongqing's sky-devouring great formation had been shattered by the heavenly wind god's finger. After being pierced through by the Golden Origin Battle Wind, the sky-devouring great formation was instantly shattered, and its power dissipated as light returned to heaven and earth. The number 1 spell formation master of the Kingdom of the Nine States, Emperor Chongqing, was also struck by the backlash from the spell formation, and he threw up a mouthful of blood. Emperor Chongqing. Teacher. It's over. Emperor Chongqing's most powerful formation was destroyed by a single finger from the heavenly wind god? Who else can stop that terrifying enemy? All of the immortals outside the enchantment barrier turned deathly pale. In their eyes, Emperor Chongqing was an invincible being after setting up the spell formation. Who would have thought that such a powerful super-mighty figure would be vanquished by a single finger from the heavenly wind god? This was far too astonishing, and all of the immortals were struck by a sense of asphyxiation. All of the students within the enchantment barrier were filled with despair. One legendary immortal after another had been vanquished before their very eyes. The heavenly wind god with the heavenly wind divine halo above his head had become their worst nightmare. Ha 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 ha! You're all dead. The 7 monarchs of our wind demon tribe have all arrived. Die, you pieces of sh*t! Stain the earth red with blood. Hundreds of wind demon powerful beings surged out from the gate in the snow mountain. Among them were 7 extremely powerful foreign tribe powerful beings. Not only were they quite large in size, but they were also enshrouded by streams of wind that were as sharp as sabers and swords, just like the power of Enlin and the others' domains. You're that piece of sh*t who killed my subordinates? Roar. I'm going to chop you into pieces and eat you. The 7 powerful foreign tribe powerful beings flew toward Enlin like howling winds. Enlin didn't say anything and merely unleashed a sword strike. An inky black sword projection engulfed heaven and earth like a black crescent moon sweeping through the earth, instantly shredding the 7 powerful foreign tribe powerful beings into pieces as well as the hundreds of wind demon powerful beings behind them. Another complete annihilation. The students and teachers didn't even have a chance to get nervous before they relaxed again. Senior student Enlin sure is reliable. I've never seen God lose before. He's a true war god. He's a man of few words. He can defeat 10,000 enemies with one sword strike. The students didn't get a chance to fight, so they could only comfort Enlin with their mouths. At this moment, more foreign tribe powerful beings were still surging out from the spatial gate. Charge! Ha ha ha! The 7 monarchs are here in person. How are you going to survive? Go to hell. Holy F***ck. Where are our people? All of the foreign tribe powerful beings were dumbstruck by the sight of a man standing in front of them with a sword in his hand. Very quickly, they realized what had happened in front of them. It was a horrifying fact. All the warriors who had come out earlier were dead. Screams erupted as the wind demons all turned around and ran back into the spatial gate. History was always eerily similar. Enlin was able to scare off the foreign tribe powerful beings again with his unstoppable power. What he was doing was akin to blocking a fountain. He would kill one if they came, and if they came in groups, he would kill them all. All of the enemies would die as soon as they came out, so they could only obediently hide back into the other world. The Wind Demon Tribe's grand plan to invade the continent had only just begun, and they had already been dealt a heavy blow. However, in contrast, the heavenly wind god was able to crush the 5 emperors with ease. Die. The heavenly wind god stepped forward, and its body instantly appeared before Emperor Chang Sheng like a bolt of lightning before stabbing a finger toward Emperor Chang Sheng's head at the same time. The power of this finger was comparable to the one that had broken the heaven-engulfing formation. If it really did strike, Emperor Chang Sheng would most likely be killed. It was also at this moment. A palm struck the heavenly wind god's face from the side. Bam! A dull thump erupted. The heavenly wind god's face twisted as its body was knocked flying for over a kilometer. Chapter 13:23. The high and mighty wind god, who possessed supreme power, was sent flying with a single slap. In that instant, the air became completely silent. Everyone looked into the void and saw an elegant and calm man waving his hand. His white imperial robe fluttered like clouds and mist, making him look ethereal like an immortal. The scene was extremely natural, as if it had merged with heaven and earth. The immortals outside the barrier were stunned, and so were the students. After defeating the 4 emperors of the celestial court in an invincible manner, the heavenly wind god became even more terrifying and invincible in everyone's eyes. However, right at this moment, the celestial Dharch sprang into action and knocked back the heavenly wind god with a single strike. This was like a ray of hope that reignited everyone's hopes. The high and mighty heavenly wind god was slapped in the face. What a relief! The celestial Dharch is so handsome. Daddy, Daddy, you're the best! Daddy, you can do it! Amidst the excited voices of the immortals, 7 extremely beautiful female immortals were excitedly cheering for the man inside the barrier. The celestial Dharch was the most powerful being in the celestial court and even the entire kingdom of the Nine States. He was a super mighty figure at the pinnacle of the Tao integration stage, and he had finally shown everyone a glimmer of hope. The heavenly wind god stabilized its body in midair, and a smile suddenly appeared on its face. An attack like this really doesn't hurt at all. The celestial Thearcha's eyes reflected the sky, and there were countless tiny divine runes flashing in his eyes, flashing hundreds of millions of times at a time, as if he were performing some kind of meticulous calculation. Oh, interesting. Your divine Tao is related to the heavens. Are you analyzing me? Using the power of heaven to analyze me? The heavenly wind god seemed to have discovered something extremely amusing, and it chortled with glee. Are you an idiot? I'm the heavens, and you're begging me to attack you? Did I give you permission to do so? With that, it waved one of its hands, and a transparent wind blew across 3,000 miles. The connection between the celestial Dharch and the heavens above was suddenly severed. However, the celestial Thearcha's expression didn't change in the slightest. All of you will be weakened upon entering the Tai Chu continent. Isn't this the doing of the heavenly Tao? It's a fight between ourselves, so why is it impossible for me to ask you to deal with you? Ha ha! The heavenly wind god chortled with glee as a hint of disdain appeared in its golden eyes. You? Do you think you're worthy? Whoosh, like a gust of wind. A clean and powerful palm suddenly appeared in front of him. The heavenly wind god's expression shifted drastically. The celestial Dharch appeared before it as if he had teleported, and this speed was beyond what it could determine. Creak, the hand was neither too large nor too small, but it just so happened to grab onto the heavenly wind god's head. A power that contained the might of the heavens gathered on his palm. Its might wasn't terrifying, yet it contained an indisputable and absolute force that was supreme and boundless. Analysis complete. Decompose and destroy. The celestial Dharch looked directly into the heavenly wind god's emotionless eyes, and his voice was as ethereal as the voice of the heavens. The next moment, an explosion resounded throughout the world. Bang! The heavenly wind god's head was crushed. The heavenly wind god's blood-curdling cries erupted throughout heaven and earth as its body crumbled and its divine halo shattered. In the end, its body completely disappeared from the world, as if it had never been there. The world regained its clarity. He won? Great! We finally won! The celestial emperor is mighty! Ha ha ha! The accursed heavenly wind god is finally dead. And it was insta-killed too. As expected of the most powerful being in the kingdom of the Nine States. The heavenly wind god's death sent all of the immortals and all of the teachers and students into ecstasy. The heavenly wind god's power was unfathomable, and the celestial Dharch was their final barrier. If even the celestial Dharch couldn't stop it, then it was unimaginable what the consequences would be if it was released. Perhaps the destruction of the celestial court and the fall of the kingdom of the Nine States really were not too far away in the future. All of the teachers and students had already begun to cheer with elation in their hearts. This was the joy of finally vanquishing a terrifying enemy in a time of peril for the celestial court. The celestial Dharch stood in midair with his brows furrowed slightly. No, the enchantment barrier hasn't been dispelled yet, and there's still a will maintaining the spell formation. This proves that. A voice suddenly swept forth like the wind. This proves that I'm still alive. The white blade of wind tore through the celestial Thearcha's protective true essence and punctured his heart. Blood stained his white imperial robe. Is that right? The heavenly wind god's voice was like a nightmare. White wind converged to form a pristine white humanoid figure with a divine halo above its head. It appeared behind the celestial Dharch with a wind sword in its hand, which had punctured the celestial Thearcha's heart. all of the celestial immortals outside the enchantment barrier and all of the teachers and students within the enchantment barrier felt as if they had been plunged into a glacial cavern upon seeing this. The 7 celestial maidens yelled for their father as they unleashed spell techniques in a frenzy to attack the enchantment barrier. I admit that you can draw upon the power of the heavens, and you do have the power to harm me, but it's a pity. The heavenly wind god's expression gradually became more and more sinister. I'm more powerful than you, so you'll never be able to kill me. The white wind sword glowed with a divine light, and it was just about to tear the celestial Thearcha's body into shreds. However, right at this moment, extremely terrifying energy fluctuations surged forth from 4 different directions at the same time. Emperor Tian Huang, Emperor Ziwei, Emperor Qing Hua, and Emperor Chang Xing all sprang into action at the same time, arriving before the heavenly wind god in the blink of an eye. It was also at this moment that the celestial Tharch unleashed a backhanded slap toward the heavenly wind god's face. The heavenly wind god's heart jolted slightly upon seeing this, and its body shot back several hundred meters to evade the 5 emperors' attacks. However, before the 5 emperors had a chance to catch their breath, the heavenly wind god pounced toward them again. Elsewhere, all of the teachers and students had already retreated to the edge of the enchantment barrier. "Anlin, can you really break this enchantment barrier?" Su Xiaolan asked with an expectant expression. "I can try. The power of this enchantment barrier is similar to the power of the protective barrier around the snow mountain. Didn't you see how I sliced through the snow mountain with my sword? If I can slice through the snow mountain, then I think this blue rhombus enchantment barrier should be no problem," Anlin replied. "Then I'll be counting on you, classmate Anlin," Vice Principal Yuhua said. Anlin didn't waste any more time with words as he slashed his evil-slaying sword toward the enchantment barrier. In order to ensure that he didn't have enough power to break through the enchantment barrier, he instantly unleashed his origin energy of the netherworld, thereby unleashing his most powerful sword strike. Boom! An earth-shattering boom erupted. The blade of the sword struck the enchantment barrier, but it was unable to pierce through it. Anlin's heart jolted with shock. What a tough shell! Could it be that I didn't use my divine sword domain? A cold and tender voice sounded. No, even without using my domain, I still have the power to slice through laws. You're just too weak. Anlin, was it really okay to say something like that in front of all of the teachers and students? Just as they were feeling awkward, a terrifying wind energy explosion suddenly erupted in the distance. The terrifying gale-force winds blasted over 100 nearby mountains into the ground, creating craters that were tens of thousands of meters in radius. The 5 emperors lay in the crater, drenched in blood. It's over. The heavenly wind god stood at the center of the explosion with golden winds revolving around its body. Chapter 1324. The heavenly wind god's voice wasn't very loud, but it reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The heavenly wind god was still standing at the center of the battlefield. The 5 emperors had been defeated. Everyone who saw this scene was unable to recover from the shock. Only after a few seconds had passed did an incredulous expression appear on one of the immortals' faces. They lost? The 5 emperors all lost? No, we're really done for this time. The enemy we're facing this time isn't on the same level at all. It's beyond the scope of what's normal. It's not something we can handle. Are the heavens really going to annihilate our celestial court? Countless celestial immortals clenched their fists as their bodies trembled uncontrollably. The 5 most powerful emperors of the celestial court had already fallen. Who else could save them? No matter how many immortals they sacrificed, they would be no different from moths flying into a flame. Just as all of the immortals were grieving and in despair, a voice erupted into the heavens. "Run!" The celestial Tharch stood up again. His hair was disheveled, and his imperial robe had been stained red by blood. He had been severely wounded, but the flames in his eyes burned even more brightly. He was like a warrior who was about to sacrifice himself and unleash his final ray of light. How could this be? The celestial arch, the several dozen celestial immortals outside the enchantment barrier had tears welling up in their eyes. They knew what the celestial Thearcha's call for them to leave entailed. All the celestial arch could do now was to ensure that as many people as possible died in the celestial court. In other words, the 5 emperors were really going to perish here this time. What are you still standing there for? Run! The celestial Thearcha's enraged voice sounded again. Daddy, don't do this. I won't leave no matter what you say. The 7 celestial maidens stood outside the enchantment barrier with tears streaming down their faces. They were clearly very scared, but they were also very determined. They had already made up their minds. If the celestial court was to perish, then they would perish along with the celestial court. I can only watch as all the emperors fall, and I choose to run. I really can't make such a decision. I would rather die in battle, Yang Jian said indifferently. That's right. I want to fight too. F***ck. Let's kill that B*****. We'll perish with the celestial court. One by one, the celestial immortals stepped forward and drew their weapons. Even the earth-level deities in the soul formation stage had gathered together and cast a combination of formations, planning to fight to the death. After the celestial Thearcha's words, not a single one of the heavenly court immortals wanted to escape. Even the 5 emperors were dumbfounded by this scene. You're really? How could the celestial court accept a bunch of idiots like you? The celestial arch scolded, but he couldn't help but burst into laughter. Emperor Qing Hua pulled out a crimson bone and murmured to himself, even if my body and consciousness are destroyed today, I'm going to fight for a chance at survival for those foolish juniors outside. Emperor Ziwei, Emperor Tianhuang, and Emperor Changsheng also rose to their feet. Divine light erupted from their bodies as if they were pillars that could prop up heaven and earth. The heavenly wind god chuckled. Why do you still think you can defeat me after being beaten like this? I really don't understand what the heavenly sea god is planning. Can't he just destroy all of you with a wave of his hand? The golden essence battle wind transformed into all types of shimmering golden weapons that flew toward the emperors. Each and every weapon was imbued with extremely terrifying power of laws, and they were imbued with the power of absolute penetration and absolute armor-piercing power. One of Emperor Qing Hua's arms, which possessed the bloodline of the Xianwu, was sliced in half like tofu by the golden essence battle wind. Now, countless shimmering golden weapons were flying toward them, and they were like countless scythes of the Grim Reaper. There was no question of whether or not they could defend themselves, the only question was whether or not they would be struck by these weapons. If they were struck by these weapons, all of their defenses would be shattered. The 5 emperors were fearless as they pounced toward the heavenly wind god again. The final battle had finally erupted. The Wind Demon Tribe living beings emerged from the spatial gate that led to another world on the 100,000-foot Divine Mountain. All of the living beings that had appeared this time possessed extremely powerful auras. They had crowns on their heads and wore purple Taoist robes. Their golden eyes were breathtaking, and they were capable of tearing through space itself. Anything that approached them would be reduced to dust. Ordinary cultivators would be so scared that they wouldn't be able to move a single glance at those existences. There were a total of 9 purple-robed beings, and all of them possessed auras comparable to Return to Void stage mighty figures. After they emerged, tens of thousands of powerful foreign tribe living beings followed behind them. All of them were rubbing their palms together, and their weapons glowed with a cold light. Kukoku, the Wind Demon Emperor is here. You can all die now. So many of our brothers have died. We'll definitely be able to exact our revenge this time. I'm going to slice open your flesh one slash at a time before drying you to death. Die, 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 all of the foreign tribe living beings roared, and their powerful killing intent swept forth in all directions. This was a new wave of enemies for the wind demons. It had to be said that the wind demons were strictly adhering to the basic principles of villains. Each time they sent an enemy, they would be a rank higher than the previous enemies, and they would provide experience and equipment to the protagonist in order to train him. The only bad thing was that after one wave ended, the next wave came a little too quickly. All of the wind demon living beings began to charge toward the teachers and students in the distance. They only had one mission in mind upon entering this world, and that was to kill all humans. Xiaolan, can you handle these people? Enlin suddenly turned around and asked. Enlin, you. Su Xiaolan gripped onto Enlin's hand, and her body trembled uncontrollably. She already knew what Enlin was going to do. If this were in the past, she would have been very confident in Enlin, and she would have allowed Enlin to leave. But now, even the 5 Dao integration stage emperors had no chance of winning, and Enlin was going to step forward. This was no different from throwing his life away. Enlin held on to Su Xiaolan's hand with an earnest expression. There's no way out now, is there? At a time like this, someone has to step forward. Otherwise, there really won't be any hope left. I can fight, and my evil-slaying sword can slice through laws imbued with the will of the heavenly Tao. This type of power should be useful against the heavenly wind god, so, my classmates and teachers will be under your protection. Is that okay? Tears welled up in Su Xiaolan's eyes, but she held back her tears as she nodded. Don't worry, leave it to me. A carefree smile appeared on Enlin's face upon hearing this before he turned to leave. Enlin, promise me you'll come back alive. Enlin smiled. Don't worry, after this battle I'll definitely… Tui tui tui. A thought suddenly occurred to him, and he immediately cut himself off. I'll be right back. Enlin flew into the air atop his brick as he spoke, flying toward the center of the battle. Chapter 1325. The wind demons quickly closed in on the teachers and students of Xiuxian United University. All of the teachers with powerful cultivation bases stood in front of the students. Kill, kill, kill. We can finally kill to our heart's content, haha. There are so many delicious humans. I can sense a burst of vitality from their bodies. It would be a pity to just kill them like this. How about we shut up and don't think too much about it? Don't forget the heavenly wind god's instructions. Our mission is to kill all of the humans. Lord Wind Emperor, there was a human who just left the large group of humans. Should we chase after him? He's going to the heavenly wind god's battle site. Why should we care about him? What a reckless idiot. He'll definitely die even faster than the humans before him. The purple-robed wind demon chuckled coldly before continuing onward. No one will die. Everyone can live, a crisp, pleasant voice sounded. A woman in a jade barley ink garment stood at the forefront of the teachers and students with an extremely determined look in her eyes. Holy flame and lightning surged from her dragon sparrow sword. And all of you are too noisy. That was the last thing the purple-robed wind demon heard. In the next instant, they were engulfed by an extremely terrifying holy flame sword projection. The white holy flame sword projection was like a proud vermilion bird descending upon the earth, and the light it produced was even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. The blood-curdling cries of the wind demons rang out incessantly. After the holy flame dissipated, the ground below was charred black. Of the 9 purple-robed wind emperors of the wind demon race, 3 had perished, and thousands of ordinary wind demon race powerhouses had been annihilated as well. The foreign army was completely dumbstruck for a split second. Su Xiaolan stood with her sword in hand, and there was no hint of fear or anxiety on her flawless face. The wind demons would not be given the time to rest. They were caught off guard and unleashed their full power. Boom, boom, boom. The ground beneath the wind demons suddenly exploded, as if they had triggered some kind of restriction. Each and every explosion was extremely terrifying, and they were powerful enough to pulverize a dozen or so wind demons. This was the 10,000 spirits Tai Chi ground explosion that Xianyuan Qing had set up in advance after learning that the barrier couldn't be broken. This was because the myriad spirit Tai Chi Dao's harmony of all things true meaning could allow the earth explosion lightning to merge with nature, making it extremely difficult to conceal. Furthermore, the alternation of yin and yang allowed the power of the earthen thunder to reach a whole new level. Dazzling flames blossomed on the ground, accompanied by the screams of the wind demons. Xianyuan Cheng's earth explosion allowed thousands of wind demons to taste the art of explosion, which became their last artistic appreciation before they died. Soon, the distance between them began to enter the attack range. All of the students unleashed their long-range spell techniques, and all types of spell techniques rained down like a hail of cannonballs, creating a spectacular sight to behold. The wind demons didn't back down either, and they unleashed a torrent of powerful wind-type spell technique. As their spells clashed, the wind demon gradually gained the upper hand. In terms of numbers, the wind demons had been reduced to 30,000, which was less than the 50,000 students. However, the wind demons were all at least of the 10th stage Dao body, and most of them were at the spirit nurturing stage or above. Even though many of the students were capable of fighting above their rank, there was no way that they could fight above their rank. Su Qianyun's moonlight disk flashed through the air, and her attacks were extremely fast and vicious, making it impossible for anyone to defend against her. She specialized in killing the wind demons that were extremely fast and could easily break through the defensive line. The battle quickly closed in on them. The human race seemed to have fallen into a disadvantageous position. Most of the several hundred soul formation stage teachers focused on defense to ensure the safety of the students and prevent them from being struck by the wind demon's spell technique. It wasn't that the teachers were cowering, but rather, it was because they knew that someone would be responsible for attacking. Falling starlight. Vice Principal Yuhua strode through the air toward the wind demons with a fearless expression. His sleeves billowed in the wind as the power of the Star Divine Tao soared into the sky before crashing down like a meteor shower. Each and every star that struck the wind demons would merge into their bodies before exploding. One wind demon after another let loose blood-curdling cries as their flesh and blood intermingled with the light of the stars before exploding like vibrant fireworks. All of the surrounding wind demons were petrified upon seeing this. Go to hell. A purple-robed wind demon charged toward Yuhua with a black scimitar in his hands, which he slashed down upon Yuhua. This wind demon possessed return to void stage power. The scimitar was imbued with the power of wind, making it extremely sharp, and it instantly dislocated the space before it. The scimitar slashed through the air in a black trajectory that was extremely fast and lethal. Star-plucking hand. Vice Principal Yuhua's hand suddenly transformed into a crystalline form, which shimmered with a peculiar light under the sunlight, and he gripped the oncoming scimitar with one hand. Crack! A violent screeching sound erupted. Right before the purple-robed wind demon's incredulous eyes, its most powerful sure-kill technique was blocked by an ordinary-looking old man with a bare hand. A translucent hand clamped tightly onto the scimitar. Before the purple-robed wind demon had a chance to react, its other hand had already clenched into a fist before crashing down like a shooting star at twice the speed of its scimitar slash. Bam! The purple-robed wind demon's head exploded like a watermelon, and its aura completely dissipated. On the other side of the student camp, a man with a feather fan in his hand strode forward in a slow and leisurely manner. He was Sword Immortal Ming Yuan, who taught the students about karma. The oncoming wind demons were already less than 1,000 feet away. Sword Immortal Ming Yuan looked up into the sky and heaved a forlorn sigh. Sigh. Blades are going to fall from the sky. All of the wind demons chortled with mirth. There's a maniac up ahead, let's go bully him first. Their voices had only just fallen when countless blades suddenly rained down from the sky. And these weren't just ordinary blades either. They were able to slice through the wind demon's tough scales with ease. Blood instantly splattered through the air as the wind demon's blood-curdling cries rang out incessantly. Blood instantly stained the ground below. Sword Immortal Ming Yuan looked at the wind demons charging toward him despite the rain of sabers, and his brows furrowed. Don't run too fast or you'll slip and fall to your deaths. I have a feeling that half of you wind demons are going to fall to your deaths. F***CKU. How could we wind demons fall to our deaths? A soul formation stage wind demon roared with rage as an azure blade of wind revolved around its hand before slashing toward the man in the distance. Right at this moment, its foot suddenly slipped, and its body fell toward the ground. A normal fall wouldn't have been so bad, but the blade that had fallen from the sky earlier was still on the ground. The blade was a double-edged blade with a head and a tail, and it was stabbed into the ground with a sharp blade projection aimed directly at its heart. Splat! The wind demon that was still yelling and screaming just a moment ago felt a chill run down its spine. In the moments before its death, it stared in disbelief at the man standing in the distance. Eerie, mysterious, absurd, incomprehensible, all sorts of emotions welled up in its heart before it finally stopped breathing. Not only did the wind demon fall to its death, but all of the charging wind demons were also tripped by some kind of unstoppable force before falling to their death. The remaining wind demons were truly terrified. The man before them was completely unfathomably eerie. They were just about to circle around the man and let the purple-robed Wind Emperor deal with him when Sword Immortal Ming Yuan spoke again. The remaining wind demons, don't move. If you take another 3 steps, you'll explode on the spot. All of the wind demons' expressions shifted drastically upon hearing this. After witnessing the sinister nature of this man, most of the wind demons didn't dare to continue charging forward. Then, all of the wind demons that didn't dare to move were greeted by the sight of Sword Immortal Ming Yuan unleashing a sword projection that struck despair into their hearts. Total annihilation. Sword Immortal Ming Yuan wiped out all of the remaining wind demons with a single sword strike. Hee, how obedient. They really are dumb enough to stop moving and become live target. If the dead wind demons heard Sword Immortal Ming Yuan's words, they would probably be enraged back to life. At the same time, the other Return to Void stage teachers, such as the Flying Sword God and Madagascar, all of whom were top-tier soul formation stage powerful beings, all unleashed their most powerful attacks. Only now did the wind demons realize how naive they had been to think that they could win. Even though their average strength was superior to the average strength of the students, their opponent's top-tier combat prowess was more than enough to crush their entire army. Chapter 13:26. The battle between the wind demons and the teachers and students would most likely draw to a conclusion soon. However, it was very difficult for the teachers and students to be elated as they knew that the battle that would determine the fate of the Celestial Court was not here. Instead, it was the battle between the 5 emperors and the Heavenly Wind God. It could be said that Sword Immortal Ming Yuan was Enlin's teacher who understood Enlin the best. His eyes looked toward where Enlin was, and a peculiar light flickered incessantly in his eyes. Like clouds and mist, his eyes quickly became clear and translucent again. Your fate is the most peculiar. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be able to predict your fate. However, this time, no matter how I try to predict your fate will still be death. A grief-stricken expression appeared on Sword Immortal Ming Yuan's face, and he shook his head after a short pause. But that's not necessarily the case. This is only the future that I have predicted. No one can predict everything in this world, but I still feel like there is hope. At this moment, on the battlefield between the 5 emperors, the Heavenly Wind God once again knocked the 5 emperors into the ground with its invincible might. What a stubborn foe! As expected, a divine Tao that has been developed to the extreme is very difficult to kill. The Heavenly Wind God made its way toward the Celestial Arch, who was covered in blood. There were already a few ghastly wounds on the Celestial Thearcha's body, and the Metal Essence Battle Wind was wreaking havoc through the wounds, which were still relentlessly destroying his body. He half knelt to the ground and panted heavily. Even though his entire body was trembling, and his consciousness was extremely depleted, and his aura was extremely feeble. He still hadn't fallen. The celestial arch couldn't fall yet. If he did, the celestial court would truly be finished. He raised his head to look at the god walking toward him, and a smile appeared on his face. Heh! There's still a gap between you and the heavenly Tao. If the heavenly Tao wanted to destroy me, it wouldn't have to go through all this trouble. I'm sure you're still being unconsciously suppressed by the heavenly Tao here, right? So what? I can kill you with ease. The heavenly wind god remained expressionless as the streams of wind in his hand materialized into a golden wind saber, and he was about to end the celestial Thearcha's life with a single slash. Outside the enchantment barrier, all of the immortals had their hearts in their throat. The 7 celestial maidens attacked the barrier with all their might, loudly chanting the celestial emperor's name. Not only did the celestial arch represent the highest combat power of the celestial court, but he was also the spiritual pillar and true leader of the celestial court. If the celestial arch fell, would the celestial court still be the celestial court of the past? Yang Jian held the divine trident in his hand. His 3 eyes widened and he gritted his teeth, but he was at his wit's end. Is the celestial court really going to perish here? Chang'e sighed faintly. She inadvertently looked somewhere inside the enchantment, and her beautiful eyes moved slightly. Die! The heavenly wind god's saber fell. The celestial emperor was barely holding on, but he was unable to dodge this lightning-fast saber technique. A gust of wind blew, and a black shadow descended from the sky, slashing at the edge of the golden saber. Bang! The sound of metal colliding could be heard. Divine light burst forth, and the golden saber's trajectory was deflected before it landed beside the celestial arch. The ground that had been reinforced by the Tao integration stage protective formation was instantly torn into a massive trench several dozen kilometers in length. Enlin landed on the ground and picked up the celestial arch before retreating for over a kilometer. The heavenly wind god was slightly taken aback by this sudden turn of events. All of the immortals outside the enchantment barrier stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. Isn't that Enlin? It's Enlin. It really is Enlin. Enlin ran away with the celestial arch. He's that small war god of the celestial court. Some of the immortals looked at the white-robed figure with an indescribable glimmer of hope in their hearts. However, most of them were filled with pessimism. The heavenly wind god was so fearsome that even the true war god of the celestial court, Yang Jian, would be no match for him, let alone the small war god of the celestial court. Why are you still standing up at a time like this? Do you have to be so stupid? Lin Junjun pursed her lips as she stared at the retreating man with tears welling up in her eyes. An indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. Sister, shouldn't we be cheering for Enlin at a time like this? Celestial Maiden Tian Shou suddenly chimed in. That's right. Enlin is such a good cook, so he must be very good at fighting as well. Don't give up, we have to cheer for him. Celestial Maiden Tian Xian chimed in. Lin Junjun only came to her senses now. Right now, they couldn't do anything other than cheer for the team. Are we going to be Enlin's cheerleaders? Lin Junjun couldn't help but burst into laughter with this in mind. She was extremely elated to see a glimmer of light in a future filled with darkness. Thus, the cheers of the 7 celestial maidens erupted from outside the enchantment barrier. Their cheers were a stark contrast to the current situation in the celestial court. Enlin looked up at the 7 celestial maidens outside the enchantment barrier with a knowing smile on his face. Why are you standing up? Are you insane? The celestial arch beside Enlin forced himself to take a deep breath before reprimanding him. He was aware of how powerful Enlin was. Even though he was very powerful, he was still far inferior to the 5 emperors and on a completely different level compared to the heavenly wind god. What was the difference between him standing up and committing suicide? If I didn't stand up, you would already be dead, Enlin said. The celestial arch. Don't worry, leave the rest to me. Unlin placed the celestial arch down beside the rock, before unleashing a simple defensive spell technique, before turning to face the heavenly wind god. The heavenly wind god was in a very strange state. It wasn't in a hurry to attack. Instead, it looked at the golden wind saber in its hand and cocked its head to the side with a hint of confusion on its face. The tense atmosphere suddenly took a strange turn. What is the heavenly wind god doing? It seems to be wary of Enlin? All of the celestial immortals suddenly had a bold thought. That's impossible. Enlin is only at the soul formation stage, and his combat prowess is only at the return to void pinnacle stage at most. How could the heavenly wind god be wary of him? Just as all of the celestial immortals were feeling extremely perplexed. Enlin finally sprang into action. That's right, Enlin had chosen to strike first. In a battle of this caliber, seizing the initiative before the enemy was ready was the most important thing to do. Origin energy of the netherworld. Wings of wind. Wind sword. Enlin's speed was elevated to its maximum, and he appeared before the heavenly wind god in the blink of an eye before slashing his evil-slaying sword through the air in a lethal, inky black trajectory. The heavenly wind god could tell that Enlin was moving very quickly, but it was very slow in its eyes. It raised its saber to block the trajectory of the evil-slaying sword. However, the evil-slaying sword suddenly changed its trajectory in mid-air and slashed toward its saber-wielding arm. Interesting. Are you going to slice off my arm? I have a wind barrier anyway, so you can slice off my arm one more time. The heavenly wind god focused its gaze and ignored Enlin's sword strike. Instead, the golden wind saber in its hand slashed toward Enlin's head. Many of the celestial immortals couldn't bear to watch this any longer. Lin Junjun and the others were so nervous that they bit down on their lips, but they were completely unaware of this. Whoosh! Right before the dumbstruck eyes of countless celestial immortals, an arm holding a golden saber was swung into the sky. Flesh and blood were separated, and white blood splattered through the air. This scene seemed to have been frozen in time. Within the image, the white-robed man was still in the same posture, but the heavenly wind god's arm had already been sliced off. Chapter 13:27. My God! Am I hallucinating? One of the immortals murmured to himself. The 7 celestial maidens' voices also came to an abrupt halt as they stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. I'm not dreaming, right? Enlin sliced off one of the heavenly wind god's arms? Aside from the celestial arch, none of the other 4 emperors were able to break through the heavenly wind god's defenses, but Enlin was able to do so. All of the immortals were astonished and in disbelief. Everything that had just happened was far too unimaginable for them to comprehend. However, no matter how astonished they were, a certain ball of fire had been ignited in their hearts. On the battlefield against the wind demons, some of the teachers and students had already begun to cheer as they looked at the battlefield in the distance. Mighty Godin! Senior student Enlin is invincible. He's so cool. I told you, classmate Enlin is the #1 legend of our school. His legend will definitely continue. We have to do our best as well. Let's kill all of the wind demons. The battle between the teachers and students and the wind demons continued, and the morale of the teachers and students was extremely high. In contrast, the wind demons were already on the brink of collapse. Su Xiaolan burned the last purple-robed wind demon to ashes before turning her gaze toward the distance, where a man was currently engaged in the most critical battle. The heavenly wind god's arm had been sliced off by Enlin. All of the spectators were extremely astonished to see this, and even the 5 emperors were dumbstruck. However, Enlin was not surprised in the slightest. Instead, he heaved a secret sigh of relief. Sure enough, the evil-slaying sword was able to break through the defensive power of the snow mountain, so it should be able to break through the heavenly wind god's defenses as well. He could kill this heavenly wind god. Enlin stepped forward and unleashed his wind sword technique again, which flashed like an inky black sword as it slashed toward the heavenly wind god's neck. The heavenly wind god had lost an arm, so there was no way it would be able to defend itself at such a close range. Everyone's breathing seemed to have stopped. There was only this sword left in the world. However, right at this moment, the severed arm that had been tossed into the sky, the wind blade that had been condensed from the metal origin battle wind, suddenly pierced into the ground like a golden beam of light. Rumble! The golden light fell to the ground, shattering rocks and piercing through the entire floating continent. Everything happened so fast that no one could react in time, including Unlin. When everyone looked over again, Unlin's body was still leaning forward, and the evil-slaying sword in his hand had already been gripped tightly by the heavenly wind god's other hand. Drip, drip, fresh blood dripped onto the ground, and soon blood flowed like a river. Everyone took a closer look and discovered that a fist-sized hole had been pierced through Unlin's chest. His entire white Taoist robe was dyed red with blood. Unlin's body swayed slightly, and he couldn't help but spit out another mouthful of blood. Unlin! Hold on! Outside the barrier, the immortals' hearts were in their throats. The 7 celestial maidens all covered their mouths and cried out in alarm. Shuizhantian, Dabai, and the other beast pets all yelled out their master's name. Su Xiaolan looked in Enlin's direction as she gripped her dragon sparrow sword tightly. The tables had turned far too quickly, and the hope that had just been ignited felt like it was about to be snuffed out again. The heavenly wind god gripped the evil-slaying sword tightly with a curious expression on its face. Your weapon is very special. Why was it able to break through my heavenly wind power? Unlin gritted his teeth, and flames of rage seemed to erupt from his eyes. All of a sudden, a golden eye appeared on his forehead. Golden ripples proliferated throughout heaven and earth. Divine plunder technique. Unlin was trying to plunder the heavenly wind god's power. In the next instant, a boundless power crashed into his mind, making him feel as if he were a speck of dust facing the entire heaven and earth, making him appear extremely tiny and feeble. This power was not something that he could handle, and indescribable pain instantly swept through his entire body. Unlin gripped his head and howled in anguish as the divine plunder technique instantly crumbled. The heavenly wind god's golden eyes flashed with astonishment. How interesting! You're trying to plunder my power! Its severed arm materialized again, and it latched onto Unlin's neck, upon which the sound of bones fracturing erupted from Unlin's neck. A smile appeared on the heavenly wind god's face amid Unlin's agonized cries. Don't you know that I am the heavens? The power to plunder the heavens? Aren't you overthinking things, you ant? Unlin's eyes were bloodshot, and he forced himself to take a deep breath as the divine light of his evil-slaying sword suddenly engulfed heaven and earth, transforming all light into pure darkness. Divine Tool Domain, activate! The heavenly wind god's hand suddenly missed. Unlin's body transformed into darkness and appeared somewhere else. At the same time, he unleashed his most powerful sword strike. Evil sword technique, Eternal Night. Darkness surged, and the peerlessly sharp sword projection threatened to plunge the entire world into eternal darkness, engulfing power, engulfing space, engulfing laws, engulfing everything. Eternal Night's method of attack was very similar to Emperor Chongqing's heaven-engulfing formation, but Eternal Night also possessed the power to slice through the laws of heaven and earth, thereby posing a threat to the heavenly wind god. Heavenly Meridian Opening. The divine halo above the heavenly wind god's head glowed with a brilliant divine light, and clear meridians suddenly appeared all over its pristine white body. Its aura soared explosively, as if the entire heavens had been enraged, and even the divine tool domain was on the brink of collapse. It unleashed a simple punch. Bam! Unlin's Eternal Night strike, which was invisible to the naked eye, suddenly exploded before being nullified by the peculiar power of wind. Not only that, but the white wind was imbued with absolute slicing power, pulverizing the divine tool domain before sweeping over Unlin's body. Over 100 ghastly wounds were instantly inflicted on Unlin's body. Blood gushed forth, and he fell to the ground as if he were a crimson man. However, he used his hands to prop himself up from the ground as he hovered in mid-air. "You're very interesting. You have an aura similar to mine, a strange ability, and the power to wound me. Who are you?" The heavenly wind god made its way toward the crimson man Unlin. "Can't speak? That makes sense. Your divine body has already sustained over 99% damage, so it's a bit difficult for you to speak. Theoretically speaking, you've already lost the ability to prop yourself up, so why haven't you fallen yet?" The heavenly wind god turned to Unlin, who was struggling to stay on the ground, and a golden wind saber appeared in its hand. Unlin panted heavily, and his vision gradually blurred. He was clearly on the brink of collapse, but there was only one thought that kept reminding himself, "I can't fall, I can't fall. If I lose, my classmates, teachers, friends, beast pets, and Xiaolan will all die here. I can't lose. So be it, I'll kill you and study your sword slowly." "Die!" Unlin. Two voices sounded at the same time. Chapter 13:28. Unlin could tell that the voice calling out to him belonged to Su Xiaolan. His muddle-headed mind instantly became clear. At this moment, the golden blade projection was already crashing down upon him. So fast. "I can't evade it." Unlin tried to move, only to find that his entire body felt as if it had been imbued with lead, and he was struck by the excruciating pain of his flesh being torn apart. Right at this moment, the evil-slaying sword in his hand tremored violently before suddenly erupting with an inky black divine light. The heavenly wind god's expression shifted. A chubby little girl had already taken over Unlin's place, and was now holding on to the evil-slaying sword. Was this the sword spirit? Even if the sword spirit were to strike, it would be too late. Unlin was dead for sure. The heavenly wind god's golden wind saber continued to fall. Bam! The heavenly wind god's head suddenly exploded. Due to inertia, the golden wind saber was also slapped away by the little girl. Silence, deathly silence. All of the immortals outside the enchantment barrier, the tens of thousands of students and teachers, the 5 emperors, and Unlin stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. Little Xie Unlin was both surprised and elated as he yelled out the little girl's name with great difficulty. Never would he have thought that little Xie would move on her own in a dire situation. She really was his little darling. Vanquish the heavens and slay all evil, annihilation. Little Xie spoke in an extremely cold and tender voice as her evil-slaying sword continued to fall upon the heavenly wind god's body. The heavenly wind god's headless body suddenly sprang into action at a speed even faster than little Xie's sword. It instantly clamped onto little Xie's wrist with one hand while its other hand punctured little Xie's chest like a blade, upon which golden blades of wind wreaked havoc upon little Xie's body. Little Xie. Unlin's heart throbbed with pain upon seeing this. Little Xie's features paled as she turned to Unlin. "What are you waiting for?" Bam! There was another explosion. The heavenly wind god reduced little Xie's body to nothingness. In that instant, Unlin felt as if he had been plunged into a glacial pit, and he glared at the heavenly wind god with boundless rage and hatred burning in his eyes. At this moment, a force suddenly came from his waist, and he was sent flying backwards. "Xiaolan, you. Let me go. What are you doing here? Its target is me." Unlin struggled, and the woman who was dragging him back was none other than Su Xiaolan. He was really afraid that he would implicate Su Xiaolan. Only by facing the heavenly wind god head-on would one realize just how terrifying it was. Su Xiaolan held Unlin's waist with one hand, pursed her lips stubbornly, and kept running away. "I really can't watch you die in front of me. The barrier has already trapped this world. Where else can you take me?" Unlin struggled with great difficulty. "Let me go. I want to fight." Right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from behind them. The heavenly wind god chased after them with its evil-slaying sword in hand, unleashing several hundred terrifying sword strikes in an instant. Su Xiaolan unleashed a mystic technique, and her body flickered as she evaded the heavenly wind god's sword projections. There doesn't seem to be anything special about using this sword like this. How strange, how is this **TTY sword able to slice through my power laws? The heavenly wind god swung its sword through the air as it spoke with a mocking expression. In its eyes, Su Xiaolan and Enlin were like two ants on the brink of death. Let me go, let me go. Enlin was still struggling. Su Xiaolan was already struggling to evade the heavenly wind god's attacks, and as they made a sharp turn, Enlin wriggled like a loach, causing Su Xiaolan to lose her grip, and Enlin fell from the sky. Aya, Enlin! Su Xiaolan was given a fright, and she reached out to grab Enlin, only to find that she missed. Enlin had successfully diverted Su Xiaolan's attacks, only to find that his body was completely beyond his control. He had been severely wounded, and his divine body was almost completely useless. There was also a protruding rock on the ground. Thump! A violent crash erupted, accompanied by the shattering of the rock and the splattering of blood. Just like that, Enlin lay flat on the ground. All of the immortals, teachers, and students drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. Some of them were already wailing Enlin's name. There was only one thought in their minds. Enlin wasn't going to fall to his death just like that, was he? There was a very good chance of that happening. Even the heavenly wind god faltered slightly. Just as Enlin's consciousness was beginning to blur, a clear voice sounded in his mind. Ding dong! Detected that host is facing a grave threat. Are you willing to sacrifice a fifth of your life force? You will receive unimaginable power. You have currently lost 2/5 of your life force. Enlin cursed in his heart. The system's hack had finally appeared. I'm willing. Enlin replied almost without any hesitation. In the next instant, his consciousness gradually cleared, and all of his injuries were healed. Furthermore, 3 black sword slashes appeared on his forehead. Enlin stood up with a warm and gentle aura in his eyes, and he heaved a light sigh of relief. Everyone was dumbstruck. They didn't understand what was going on. Madagascar, Celestial Immortal Mingyuan, and Xianyuan Cheng were all looking at Enlin with complex expressions. They had seen Enlin use this power before. That's the third one, Su Xiaolan murmured to herself as she clenched her fist. Enlin seemed to have sensed something, and he turned toward the woman in a jade dress with a warm smile on his face. I'm fine. Fine my ***s. Su Xiaolan couldn't repress her tears as she spoke with an aggrieved and self-reproachful expression. I accidentally dropped you to the ground, it's all my fault. Enlin was a little speechless. I have to thank you instead. If the heavenly wind god had attacked me, I would probably have died before this thing even appeared. Alright, let's not talk about this for now. Get away from me and we'll talk in a minute. Su Xiaolan nodded obediently before flying into the distance. What's going on? The celestial Dharch was dumbstruck as he looked at Enlin, who had miraculously recovered from all of his injuries. I don't know either. He's in a very peculiar state right now. I can't sense his aura at all, but I feel like he's supposed to be there. Emperor Ziwei, who had been severely wounded to the ground, spoke with a perplexed expression. A lifelike head materialized on the heavenly wind god's headless body once again. It scratched its head as it looked at Enlin. Did I hear that right? Did you just say that you can take care of me in a minute? I might only need half a minute. Enlin spread open his hand, and the evil-slaying sword tremored violently before flying toward his hand. The heavenly wind god was still gripping the evil-slaying sword tightly, but its body was also carried away by the power imbued within the sword. Ha ha! Reckless ant, have you not realized that I have an immortal body? The heavenly Tao exists forever, and I will never die. You will never be able to defeat me. The heavenly wind god chortled with glee as it activated its heavenly veins to its fullest extent. It gripped the evil-slaying sword tightly before slashing down upon Enlin's power. Ding, the crisp ringing of a sword erupted. Unlin extended a pair of fingers to clamp down on the heavenly wind god's evil-slaying sword. The heavenly wind god's pupils contracted as incredulity appeared on its face. Slap! A resounding slap reverberated through heaven and earth. The heavenly wind god had been slapped in the face. The body formed from the power of the heavenly god of wind was almost on the verge of collapse. Chapter 1329. A resounding slap reverberated throughout heaven and earth. Everyone's hearts jolted upon seeing this. No one would have thought that Unlin would unleash such a resounding slap upon his first attempt. Not only was it just a single slap, but it was so powerful that it almost shattered the heavenly wind god's body. This was a feat that even the 5 emperors combined were unable to accomplish. While everyone was shocked, an inexplicable sense of carefreeness welled up within them. The heavenly wind god was a little dumbstruck by that slap. Impossible! I'm one of the representatives of the heavenly Tao. Even if my power has been restricted, there's no way I could be shattered by a single slap. In contrast to the heavenly wind god's confusion and astonishment, Unlin wore a disappointed expression. What? You're so fragile? I was going to torture you, but I guess I'll pass. The heavenly wind god, everyone. A dazzling bolt of rainbow lightning suddenly burst forth from Unlin's fingers, which were gripping onto the evil-slaying sword. The lightning crawled along the blade of the evil-slaying sword, all the way up the heavenly wind god's arm before spreading throughout its entire body. For some reason, the heavenly wind god was struck by an extremely terrifying sense of pain, and it let loose an involuntary wail. The evil-slaying sword slipped out of its hand and was retrieved by Unlin. Green light surged into the heavens as an indescribable healing power surged into the evil-slaying sword in a frenzy. I'm sorry, little Xie. You were wounded so severely because of me. I'll make him pay. Unlin spoke with an apologetic expression. He gripped the hilt of his sword with one hand while unleashing rainbow lightning with his other hand. Lightning crashed down upon the heavenly wind god. Not only was the rainbow lightning extremely powerful, but it was also able to ignore the heavenly wind god's protective barrier and strike directly at its essence. It was exactly because of this that the heavenly wind god was struck by an excruciating pain. Never would the heavenly wind god have thought that an ant that it could crush with ease a moment ago would be able to unleash such terrifying power. A sense of emotion that it had never experienced before enshrouded its entire body. Kill! I have to kill you! I can't let you live! The heavenly wind god's determination suddenly became extremely clear and firm. This child must not be allowed to live. It used all the power it could use, and its entire body shone with endless white divine light. The wind and clouds rolled for tens of thousands of miles, like an incomparably huge funnel. Within the vortex, the heavenly wind god's eyes were as bright as the sun, and its white divine halo was even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. At this moment, it had already transformed into a supreme god, and it was emanating a brilliant and boundless heavenly might. That's right, this was a power that struck fear into the hearts of even Tao integration stage super mighty figures. The rainbow lightning that covered its body was instantly shattered by the wind. Speed, pressure, devour, reduce, crush, annihilate, everything was maximized. Kill, kill, kill. The heavenly wind god had never wanted to kill someone so badly before. Its murderous aura even resonated with heaven and earth, causing the great Tao of heaven and earth to tremble. Everyone had an inexplicable feeling in their hearts. Heaven wants to kill Unlin. Unknowingly, the terrifying divine wind had already ravaged the entire campus. On the tens of thousands of square kilometers of land that had been reinforced by the formation, the earth cracked inch by inch. The endless mountains were cut off, the houses were smashed, and the sea of trees was blown into tiny sawdust. This was the full power of the heavenly wind god, and heaven and earth were completely unable to withstand it. All of a sudden, space crumbled, and chaotic turbulence erupted, as if it were the end of the world. The divine wind that was powerful enough to easily kill Return to Void stage mighty figures surged violently before sweeping toward the tens of thousands of students and teachers. All of the students and teachers were deathly pale, and even Vice Principal Yuhua wore an expression of despair. They were trapped within the enchantment barrier, and had nowhere to run to in the face of this terrifying divine wind god. This was the power unleashed by the heavenly wind god. Vice Principal Yuhua and the other Return to Void stage mighty figures were not going to be able to protect so many students. Right at this critical moment, an inky black and gargantuan body suddenly appeared before them. This was a whale with 4 short legs and thick, sausage-like lip. It was like a massive mountain range that stood in the way of the divine wind god. Rumble, the divine wind god crashed relentlessly into its black body, inflicting a series of ghastly wounds on its body. Principal! Tears welled up in the eyes of all of the students and teachers upon seeing this, and they were almost moved to tears. The principal, who had been completely invisible this entire time, had suddenly appeared and risked his life to save them. The whale let loose a cry and turned its head to the side as its body gradually became semi-transparent. Everyone could see the location where Lin was battling through the whale's semi-transparent body. The whale's large, lifelike eyes were curved into crescent moons, and the corners of its lips curled up into a knowing smile. All of the students and teachers were moved to tears again. Sob, sob, sob. Principal Wang, you're truly a good principal who has touched the hearts of the 9 states. He's already been ravaged by the divine wind god, but he still wants to satisfy our desire to spectate. Is there such a considerate principal in this world? Senior student Lin, I love you. Be careful, we're talking about the principal here. Principal, I love you. On the battlefield, the heavenly wind god was exuding boundless divine might. You must die today. It spoke in a completely emotionless voice, as if it were issuing a judgment to all living beings, and all they had to do was accept it. Only now did the heavenly wind god exhibit some self-awareness of the heavenly Tao. Lin stood not far away from the heavenly wind god, and his expression didn't change in the slightest. Is this all you've got? Lin felt like there was nothing he couldn't do. He also wanted to see just how terrifying a so-called representative of the heavenly Tao was. It looked like the heavenly wind god focused its gaze, and a golden chaotic divine wind crashed down upon Lin like a divine saber. It was so fast that even the 5 emperors were unable to keep up with it. Golden light illuminated heaven and earth, and only this saber strike remained. It was undoubtedly the case that if this attack were to strike any one of the 5 emperors, their bodies and souls would be destroyed. Evil sword technique, first technique, spatial slash. Lin wielded his evil slaying sword and flicked it through the air, creating a series of sword projections. The golden chaos divine saber that seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth was sliced in half from the middle. Boom! Even after being sliced in half, the extremely terrifying blade projection still crashed into the ground, tearing a bottomless abyss into the ground. A hint of emotion appeared in the heavenly wind god's eyes upon seeing this. Evil sword technique, second technique, flash thrust. Lin's body suddenly disappeared on the spot. Everyone felt like Lin had disappeared into thin air, with the exception of the heavenly wind god. The heavenly wind god pressed its hands forward, and over 10,000 layers of circular wind shields instantly materialized, each of which was imbued with the power of the heavenly Tao. Sure enough, Lin appeared before the heavenly wind god in the next instant before thrusting his evil-slaying sword forward. The inky black sword blade struck the 10,000 layers of wind shields and tore through all of the wind shields like a hot knife through butter. Regardless of whether it was the power of wind or the laws of wind, everything was pierced through. The 10,000 layers of wind shields were all broken in less than a second. The evil-slaying sword pierced through the heavenly wind god's chest right before everyone's eyes. Unlin raised his head to meet the heavenly wind god's dumbstruck eyes with a smile. The power of the heavenly Tao? Is that so? Chapter 1330. No one would have thought that Unlin would still be able to stab his evil-slaying sword into the heavenly wind god's chest even after it had unleashed its full power. However, this was happening right before their eyes. The heavenly wind god was astonished, confused, and perplexed. It really didn't understand. It represented the will of the heavenly Tao and possessed the paramount power of the heavenly gods, so why was it unable to defeat a human? Where did this human come from? Bursts of divine light erupted from Unlin's evil-slaying sword, and black-veined patterns began to spread from the puncture point before crawling all over the heavenly wind god's body. Only now did the heavenly wind god suddenly discover that its power had been restricted. Even the divine halo above its head was quickly dimming, as if it had been disintegrated and engulfed by some kind of power. This is impossible. My power represents the heavens. How could it be restricted? This doesn't make any sense. The heavenly wind god raised its hand to discover that its hand was trembling and completely powerless. It couldn't even muster up any power, let alone retaliate. All of a sudden, it seemed to have realized something, and it turned to Unlin with astonishment on its face. The representative of the heavenly Tao can't be restricted, unless it's a higher. Before it even had a chance to finish its sentence, Unlin's sword had already struck the heavenly wind god's body, slicing it in half. A black sword projection erupted forth like a black crescent moon before completely engulfing the heavenly wind god's body, leaving no trace behind. He had slain the heavenly wind god with a single sword strike. Heaven and earth returned to normal. Only Unlin stood silently on the barren earth. Is it over? The celestial Dharch murmured to himself as he looked at the man in the blood-stained white robe. The other 4 emperors were also looking around nervously in fear of the heavenly wind god reappearing. The celestial Dharch had blasted the heavenly wind god's body apart, yet it was still able to suddenly revive. The emperors had no choice but to be cautious this time. Crack! A crisp sound suddenly rang out in the void. All of the immortals' hearts jolted with anxiety, but some of them immediately burst into tears of joy as they looked toward the source of the sound. The blue prismatic enchantment barrier had been shattered. This meant that there was no longer any energy left to maintain the barrier. The invincible heavenly wind god that had brought nightmares to the celestial court had really been slain by Unlin. Success! The heavenly wind god is dead. We really won, we finally won. The celestial court has finally escaped this calamity. Unlin is truly worthy of being called the god of war of the celestial court. The blue barrier shattered into pieces and disappeared into thin air. Unlin raised his head and looked at the immortals flying towards him, excitedly. His body relaxed, and the power in his body flowed out like crazy. His body became empty and he fell backwards. Then, he felt a gentle touch from behind, and for a moment, he bumped into a warm and fragrant embrace. Smelling that familiar fragrance, Unlin smiled and said, "Xiaolan, what do you think? Am I handsome?" Su Xiaolan hugged Unlin, and her eyes were red. She wanted to scold him, but she didn't have the heart to do so. She could only say softly, "Handsome, very handsome. But don't do that again, all right?" "I know. Don't worry, there won't be a next time." Unlin rubbed his head against the woman behind him to take advantage of her again. A faint blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face, but she cast aside her thoughts at the sight of Unlin's feeble state. "Xiaolan, I'm very tired. I'm going to take a nap." "All right, Do you want to sleep in the coffin?" "All right." In reality, compared to a coffin, Unlin would much rather sleep in Su Xiaolan's arms. Thus, Unlin was slowly placed into the blood-soul jade coffin right before the eyes of all the immortals. His eyes were tightly shut, and his expression was one of serenity. Many of the immortals had tears welling up in their eyes, and some of them were even shedding tears. "What? Mr. Unlin is the most noble person I've ever met. Ever since he stood up for his friends, teachers, and the celestial court without fear of death, he is the immortal that I, Naja, admire the most. He is the war god, the true war god of the celestial court. I'll never forget Enlin, Wa. All of the immortals wept as they looked at the coffin. The celestial Thearcha's expression darkened upon seeing this. Can you guys restrain yourselves? It looks like you're mourning for Enlin, do you understand? All of the immortals came to their senses, and came to a sudden realization. That's right, Enlin wasn't dead, so this was indeed a very strange situation. They didn't say anything, but they didn't leave either. Instead, they stared at the man in the coffin with gratitude and reverence in their eyes. Lin Junjun carefully supported the celestial arch as they also made their way toward the coffin. Her eyes shimmered with tears as she stared intently at the man in the coffin. The celestial arch was feeling a little depressed. His father was severely wounded, but his daughter was completely focused on the man in the coffin. This was way too heart-wrenching. However, this was understandable. Celestial Maiden Chang Yi was an exquisitely beautiful woman, but she was nowhere near as eye-catching as Enlin at a time like this. She stood beside the coffin and looked at Enlin with her beautiful eyes, and she suddenly understood why Lord Luya held him in such high regard. It had to be said, Enlin was always able to surprise her every time. Looks like I'll have to work harder. At the very least, I'll be able to refine the divine pills at a faster rate. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you'll become after taking those divine pills. A mesmerizing smile appeared on Chang Yi's face as anticipation shimmered in her eyes. Erlang Shen looked at Enlin with an expression full of emotion. Ever since I heard that you beat up Ziwei and became known as the little war god of the celestial court, I've always thought that you would one day replace me as the war god of the celestial court, but I didn't think that this day would come so soon. Yang Jian wasn't someone who held himself back. On the contrary, he held Enlin in high regard. The celestial court was extremely fortunate to have a war god like Enlin in their ranks. At the same time, at the center of the divine mountain, within the spatial gate, 2 more wind devils jumped out. Ha ha! Foolish humans, do you know how terrifying our wind empresses are now? Kill, kill, kill! Kill them all! The 2 wind demons appeared outside the spatial gate. However, they were not greeted by the sight of rivers of human blood. Instead, they were greeted by a vast expanse of barren land. Tens of thousands of wind demons had all disappeared. Oh wait, there were still some severed limbs on the ground. A Dao integration stage 4-legged whale and tens of thousands of students and teachers all turned toward the 2 wind demons at the same time. Gulp, the wind demons swallowed as their legs became a little weak, and they turned around in an attempt to flee back into the spatial gate. Kacha, a crisp cracking sound rang out. The spatial gate to the other world suddenly cracked, shattering into pieces on the ground. Without the support of a certain power, there was no way back. The 2 wind demons' eyes widened as if they were about to go insane. What if the gate back exploded? I'm waiting for an answer. Behind them were tens of thousands of powerful humans. These were powerful beings who had completely annihilated their entire wind demon army. How were 2 soul formation stage wind demons supposed to fight them? This was a hopeless situation. There was no way they could survive. Let's commit suicide. Otherwise, we'll wish we were dead. One of the wind demons suggested. All right. The other wind demon pulled out a saber. Right at this moment, a man with bushy eyebrows and large eyes suddenly appeared between the 2 wind demons with a buoyant smile. You want to die? It's not that easy. Chapter 1331. Vice Principal Yuhua used a spell technique to imprison the 2 wind demons before flying toward the 5 emperors. The 5 emperors had all sustained extremely severe injuries during this battle, but thankfully, none of them had perished. After asking Su Xiaolan and ascertaining that Enlin was indeed unscathed, she finally departed and went into seclusion in order to recover from her injuries. Unlin was still lying in his coffin, and the 3 black sword scars on his forehead had disappeared. Something that transcended beyond the laws of the great Tao detached itself from his body and merged into the sky. Heaven and earth didn't seem to have changed at all. None of the living beings on the continent detected anything, including the extremely powerful emperors. Only the celestial Dharch seemed to have sensed something, and he turned toward the sky. Meanwhile, within a mystic realm that was enshrouded in auspicious light and immortal energy, a lithe and graceful woman with the lower body of a snake and the lower body of a human was also looking up into the sky, as if she could see through the mystic realm to the changes taking place in the outside world. What she didn't realize was that the sprinkler that was used to water the flowers was still spraying out divine liquid to water the flowers, thereby inadvertently dampening the immortal rank flowers. Within the celestial court, Xiaoxian United University, the beautiful campus had already been reduced to rubble. Not a single place within a radius of tens of thousands of square kilometers was unscathed. And this was even after the University Protection Formation had been reinforced. If it weren't for the University Protection Formation and Principal Wang Xianyu injecting his power into the formation, the entire floating continent would have most likely been completely destroyed by this battle. The little whale looked at the ravaged campus and blew out a dejected bubble. "Sigh, my beautiful campus, how did you end up like this?" Vice Principal Yu Hua heaved a forlorn sigh. "Sigh, there's nothing we can do. We can only use some resources from the university's budget to conduct emergency repairs." "This isn't called repair, it's called reconstruction." The little whale blew out a bubble. Wang Xianyu thought about it for a moment before blowing out another bubble. "How about we call a Grandmaster Construction Cultivator over to do some repairs? That way, we'll be able to make the campus a little more beautiful." "Do whatever the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator wants?" Vice Principal Yu Hua drew a sharp intake of breath. "Does our school have that much money?" Wang Xianyu's expression was solemn. "Even if you don't have that much money, you have to squeeze it out for me. You have to give the teachers and students who have contributed greatly to this battle a good learning and teaching environment." Vice Principal Yu Hua understood. The principal was very satisfied with the performance of the teachers and students in this battle. It was precisely because of this that it attached so much importance to its study life. No matter how tough it was, he couldn't let his teacher and students suffer. The 2 principals hit it off and decided to invest heavily in the next project to make the school more beautiful. In the darkness, after some time, Unlin slowly awoke, and what he saw was not a coffin lid. Instead, he was greeted by the sight of a large, soft bed. "Ah! Giant Unlin is awake." The beautiful fairy was the first to notice this and let loose a cry of surprise. Dabai, Shuizhantian, Xiaohong, Little Gu, and all of his beast pets also pounced toward Unlin with excitement in their eyes. "Big Brotherin, you're finally awake. You made me wait for so long." "Woof." Dabai stuck out its tongue as it massaged Unlin's chest with its paws. "Master, how are you feeling? Are you all right?" Xiaohong asked in her sweet voice. Unlin shook his head with a smile before sitting up and stretching his body. "I'm full of energy." Master, your battle just then was far too astonishing. You could even slice through the power of the heavens with a single strike of your sword. I felt as if I had just ascended to the heavens. As expected of the peerless and unparalleled man who is destined to be remembered for eternity. Bad *SS. Shuizhantian flapped his little wings as he praised Unlin with excitement. "All right, that's enough. Let Master have some peace and quiet." Little Gu transformed into a colorful butterfly before dancing around Unlin. "Master, what do you want to do now? Do you want Little Gu to dance for you?" Xiaohong hesitated momentarily before replying in her sweet voice. "Master, if you really want to see us dance, Little Gu and I can dance for you." Unlin's mouth gaped open as he stared blankly at the 2 beast pets before him. He paused for a moment before asking, "Are you guys all right?" I'm not used to you guys behaving like this. Little Goo and Little Red were going to dance for him? My God. That didn't make sense at all. Those two noob fishes would do something like that? Could it be fake? Little Goo and Little Red were even more embarrassed by the incredulity and shock on Lin's face, as if they were little children who had done something wrong and were regretting their actions. Oi, what's wrong with you guys? You're making me so nervous. Lin's expression darkened as he looked at his beast pets. At this moment, Tina flew over and grabbed onto Lin's index finger as tears shimmered in her emerald eyes. What? Giant Lin, you must have paid an extremely heavy price for that mystic technique of yours to suddenly become so powerful, right? Debai's ears drooped as he spoke with a dejected expression. The emperors of the celestial court have analyzed this matter. Big Brotherin, you've just obtained an inexplicably powerful mystic technique, so there's no way that it wouldn't come without a price and repercussions. Tell us, how many days do you have left? Lin's mouth gaped open. How many King days do I have left? He finally understood why Xiao Hong and Little Goo were so considerate toward him. It turned out that they thought he was going to die, which was why they were so nice to him before they died. Lin's lips twitched involuntarily with this in mind. What was this feeling of being touched and about to throw up blood at the same time? Regarding such a ket-up matter, of course he had to explain it clearly. He couldn't let his beast pets worry about him. Furthermore, he didn't want his beast pets to think he was going to die every day. That kind of healing was very terrifying. I really am going to die soon. I can probably live for another year. A bitter expression appeared on Lin's face as he forced a smile onto his face. What, only 1 year? Master, a depressing atmosphere instantly permeated the room as all of the beast pets had tears welling up in their eyes. I just want to see Xiao Hong and Little Goo dance for me before I die, Lin continued. Xiao Hong and Little Goo immediately agreed upon hearing this. Xiao Hong transformed into a young woman in a fiery red dress. Her figure was exquisite, and her skin was as fair as snow. She had a pair of mesmerizing eyes that were as clear as water, and she was both pure and seductive at the same time. Lin sighed internally. How long had it been since he had seen Xiao Hong like this? Compared to Tina, who was a pure and innocent fairy, Xiao Hong was the real deal. With a shake of her body, Xiao Gu also transformed into a tall, slender, and beautiful woman in a colorful dress. Compared to Xiao Hong's seductive appearance, Little Goo was more like a tranquil and graceful celestial maiden. This was the first time Lin had seen Little Goo transform into a human form. He was astonished, but at the same time, he was also exclaiming in his heart that he was going to die. Otherwise, how would he be able to enjoy such benefits? Just like that, Tina played the music, and Xiao Hong and Little Goo, two exquisite beauties of different styles, began to dance to the beat. It looked very harmonious and beautiful. Lin was momentarily entranced, and he cheered loudly. Right at this moment, a woman in a jade dress opened the door. Chapter 1332. Yo, my hero, Lin. You just crawled out of your coffin, and you look quite energetic. Su Xiaolan leaned against the door, and looked at Lin with a hint of a smile on her face. Lin was just about to clap when an awkward expression appeared on his face. Xiaolan, listen to me. Little Red and Little Goo thought I wouldn't be able to live for long, so they danced for me. Lin hurriedly explained. Little Red and Little Goo stopped dancing and stared at Lin with astonishment on their faces. We thought you wouldn't be able to live for long? Didn't you say you wouldn't be able to live for more than a year? So you were lying to us. Big baddie. What a waste of our emotions. Xiao Hong and Little Goo let loose a shrill cry before pouncing toward Lin. Thump thump thump, bang bang bang, clatter clatter clatter, puff puff puff, Lin was beaten to the ground by the two women. Su Xiaolan was still leaning against the door and pursed her lip. Men. Soon, a man and a woman ran into the room. Classmate Unlin, how did you become like this? Su Qianyun asked in a mellow voice with concern and panic on her face. Bruised and swollen. Is this a side effect of using a mystic technique? Xianyuan Qing speculated. Unlin, bruised and swollen after using your mystic technique? In any case, Unlin's beast pets and friends were finally reassured after another round of explanations. Xianyuan Qing said, our school is on a 10-day holiday to rebuild the campus. 3 days have already passed. We're currently in a courtyard beside the Jade Lake in the Celestial Court. Su Xiaolan smiled. Everyone else has already heard of your awakening. However, in order to ensure that you can rest in peace, I've rejected all of your classmates and teachers, as well as the immortals of the Celestial Court. Otherwise, they won't be able to fit in such a large courtyard. Unlin nodded in understanding. Right now, he was the most famous immortal in the Celestial Court. There were too many people who were concerned about him and worshipped him. There was an endless stream of people coming to him to express their condolences. He would not have any free time. However, the Celestial Dharch said that after you've recovered, you can pick a time to come to the Celestial Dharch Palace so that we can discuss what to do next, Su Xiaolan added. Everyone exclaimed in surprise when they heard this. They knew what that meant. In the eyes of the 5 emperors of the Celestial Court, perhaps Unlin already had the qualifications to sit on equal footing with them and discuss matters together. Haha, let's talk about this in the future. Unlin waved his hand, seemingly unconcerned. His friends and pet beasts sat down in a circle in the beautiful courtyard, sipping tea as they chatted. I heard that the Celestial Court has completely sealed off any information regarding the Heavenly Wind God's attack. Most likely, only the most powerful figures in the Celestial Court are aware of this. Xianyuan Qing took a sip of tea before speaking in an indifferent voice. Everyone else has also sworn Dao Heart vows not to divulge this information. This is indeed a very important matter, so it's best not to divulge too much information. Unlin nodded in agreement with the Celestial Court's decision to seal off any information regarding this matter. Just the Heavenly Wind God's attempt to destroy the human race could be used by the foreign tribes to bring disaster to the human race. But a lot of people seem to be very interested in me, a chubby little girl in a black dress said with a resigned expression as she sipped her tea. Unlin couldn't help but pinch little Xie's soft cheek. He only withdrew his hand after she glowered at him with a sheepish smile. There are already a lot of people interested in you, so what's wrong with a few more? I'm already used to it. Little Xie rolled her eyes. Used to it? They were all infatuated by my beauty before, but now they're trying to slice me up. How is that the same? It's all right. From the perspective of the Celestial Court, they're more interested in slicing Unlin than you. Su Xiaolan offered words of consolation. Unlin. Xiaolan, don't you feel guilty for saying this? Little Xie was indeed consoled, and she turned to Unlin with a wide grin on her face. Unlin wore an aggrieved expression. Xianyuan Qing laughed heartily. Classmate Unlin, you'll have to carry the evil-slaying sword with you when you go out in the future. You'll have to be careful when you're sliced up. Class captain, even you're making fun of me. Unlin heaved a forlorn sigh. I can sense a deep sense of malice from this world. He turned to little Xie as he spoke, and he extended a demonic claw. In this cold and emotionless world, the two of us have a huge secret on our bodies, so we can only hug each other for warmth. His demonic claw landed on little Xie's soft, round cheeks, and it felt super good. Can you stop? Little Xie immediately flared up, and she raised her evil-slaying sword before charging after Unlin. Save me, little Lan. The sword spirit is rebelling. Unlin yelled for help. Nicely done, little Xie. All men are pigs, little Lan said. Unlin. Everyone chatted and had fun in the courtyard, and before they knew it, another day had passed. In all honesty, Lin's entire body had exploded upon seeing little Xie vanquished by the heavenly wind god's palm. Thankfully, sword spirits possessed special constitutions that allowed them to return to the sword to be nurtured again after being vanquished. Lin unleashed a large-scale healing spell technique after detonating his body, and little Xie was quickly healed. An entire day passed. The next day, Lin finally made his way toward the Celestial Larch Pavilion. There were some things that he had to face now. Lin looked up at the pristine, white pavilion in the distance. It hovered above the clouds and was enshrouded by bursts of divine light, giving it a holy and ethereal appearance. He made his way up the cloud staircase. Lin extended a finger, upon which a gust of wind revolved around his fingertip. It was ethereal and ethereal, as if it were in harmony with the great Tao of heaven and earth. He had a feeling that if he were to unleash the wind on his fingertip, the wind would be able to sweep the Celestial Larch Pavilion tens of thousands of kilometers away. This was a secret that he had. A secret that no one knew about. He possessed the power of the heavenly wind god. To put it more accurately, he had absorbed the heavenly wind god's power. Within the cultivation methods section on the system interface, his wind-type cultivation method was originally at the 2nd stage, but it had now been upgraded to the 9th stage. The system's explanation was: Level 9 Wind Spirit Technique, the pinnacle of the Tao of Wind, the essential Tao of Wind, the power of the heavenly Tao. This was a super hack. However, he had tried to use the power of the heavenly wind god, but his power had been completely depleted before he could even use it. It was quite clear that he didn't have enough power to use it. Even so, his power in the Tao of Wind had increased to an extremely terrifying degree. Lin knew that even though his system was a scam, it was still very bad *SS. However, the fact that it could even take away the power of the heavenly wind god struck him with a little fear. Could it be that the system was more bad *SS than the heavenly Tao? That was impossible. Then what was the relationship between the system and the heavenly Tao? Did this have something to do with his Tianming Tao physique? Lin discovered that there were many mysteries surrounding him. These mysteries were extremely important to him, and he didn't dare to reveal them to anyone else. Otherwise, he would be dissected before he had a chance to unravel these mysteries. Phew! In any case, let's see what the Celestial Larch and the others have discovered first. Lin arrived in front of the Celestial Larch Pavilion and exhaled lightly before pushing open the door. Chapter 1333. Lin pushed open the door to the Celestial Larch Pavilion. The scene inside was quite unexpected to him. There were no domineering decorations, nor was there an ethereal atmosphere. There was only a pure white space, a table, and a few chairs. 5 mighty figures who could shake the entire continent with a stomp of their feet sat around the table, chatting while munching on sunflower seed. All of them turned in unison at the sight of Lin before waving at him in a friendly manner. "Mr. Lin, come here. Welcome, war god of the celestial court. Mr. Lin, come and have some tea. Have a taste of my immortal tea." All of the emperors extended warm greetings to him. Lin didn't stand on ceremony as he sat down on one of the chairs. He had actually interacted with all of these emperors before. Emperor Changsheng had given him a formation disc. Emperor Qing Hua had tasted his frying pan dish during the Chef God competition. Emperor Tian Huang had beaten Leiden for him in the Dark Marshlands, and he had beaten Emperor Ziwei in the Immortal Spirit Tower. As for the Celestial Larch, he was even more familiar with him. The Celestial Larch had saved his life on many occasions, and he had swindled a lot of money out of the Celestial Thearcha's daughter. This tea is awesome. Lin took a sip of the tea brewed by Emperor Qing Hua to find that it was extremely delicious, and he felt as if his entire body was on cloud 9. Aside from that, there was also a faint intent realm imbued within the tea, making Lin feel as if he had been transported into a picturesque immortal realm. The pure white space around him instantly transformed into a world filled with the chirping of birds and the fragrance of flowers. This was not an illusionary realm. This was an extremely realistic intent realm. And Lin could even feel a furry white fox snuggling up against his chest. The soft and smooth sensation was not an illusion. The celestial Dharch pointed at the intricate teapot with a smile upon seeing the astonishment on Lin's face. Don't underestimate the tea brewed by Qing Hua. The tea leaves in this teapot are made from the immortal rank material, North Dream Immortal Spirit Leaves. Lin was truly astonished this time. Using immortal rank materials to brew tea? What a luxurious life! Emperor Qing Hua stroked his snowy white beard and laughed heartily. After escaping from death, I've realized that only idiots wouldn't use good things. If I really died one day, wouldn't all the good things on me be gone before I could properly enjoy them? Good stuff. Only when it's put to use will it be a good thing. What's the difference between an immortal rank material and an ordinary brick if it's placed in a storage ring? After saying this, Emperor Qing Hua took a comfortable sip of tea and was as elated as a celestial being. Oh no, he was an immortal. And Lin fell into deep thought upon hearing Emperor Qing Hua's words. He felt like there seemed to be a lot of good stuff in his storage ring that he hadn't used yet. Haha, come to think of it, I really have to thank Mr. Lin for being able to survive. Emperor Qing Hua stroked his beard and heaved a long sigh before turning to Lin with a grateful smile on his face. Please don't say that, Senior Qing Hua. I didn't do anything worthy of praise or gratitude. I only did it to save the teachers and students, to save the celestial court, and to save the entire world, Lin hurriedly replied in a polite manner. The 5 emperors' faces convulsed involuntarily upon hearing this. We were only King thanking you for saving our lives, but you're elevating it to the level of saving the entire world? And you're saying there's nothing worthy of praise or gratitude. All of a sudden, the martial monarchs felt like spitting out a mouthful of saliva. Hee. An awkward yet polite chuckle appeared on the celestial Thearcha's face. Mr. Lin's performance in that battle was truly astonishing. You saved our lives and the celestial court, so it's no exaggeration to say that, hence, after some discussion, we have decided that you have the right to enter all of the mystic realms within the celestial court. On top of that, we will officially bestow upon you the title of War God of the Celestial Court. Also, we have a big present for you as well. The celestial Thearcha's words were very powerful, and Lin was completely taken aback. Wasn't he supposed to come here to talk about the heavenly wind god? How did this suddenly turn into a gift? However, this kind of gift, he really liked it. I'm finally the war god of the celestial court. Who would have thought that this day would come so soon? Lin suddenly sighed with emotion. By the way, where's the former war god Shin Yangjian? Lin asked. He's not the war god anymore. The war god of the celestial court can only be the most powerful immortal below the 5 emperors. You're clearly more powerful than him, and he's very impressed by you for that, the celestial Dharch replied with a smile. Lin chuckled with a hint of guilt on his face. If it weren't for the system's explosive power, he felt like he wouldn't be able to defeat Shin in a fight. Shin was a return to void stage mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, which was about the same level as the ancient dragon empress and Ao Xiao. How could Lin, who was only at the soul formation stage, defeat such a powerful being? However, this feeling of guilt soon disappeared. Lin thought to himself. He was going to reach the return to void stage soon. When that time came, would he be scared of Shin? He was truly the war god of the celestial court. By the way, do the war gods of the celestial court come with any special benefits? Lin asked. A title sounded great, but he preferred practical benefit. You can choose any immortal tool from the heavenly treasure pavilion of the celestial court, the celestial Dharch replied. Thank you. A wide smile appeared on Lin's face. That's nothing. The benefits that we 5 emperors have combined to give you are truly priceless. Emperor Ziwei spoke with a smug expression upon seeing Enlin's expression. Enlin became excited upon hearing this. What is it? Emperor Ziwei smiled but didn't say anything. The other 4 emperors also looked at Enlin with smiles on their faces and didn't say anything. Enlin was a little perplexed. What is it? Tell me. Emperor Ziwei suddenly took off his shirt, revealing his perfectly proportioned muscles. What do you want? Why are you taking off your shirt? Enlin was starting to panic. The Celestial Dharch, Emperor Chongqing, Emperor Qinghua, and Emperor Tianhuang were all smiling, and the atmosphere was a little peculiar. Enlin suddenly felt like he had been too rash in coming here. Now that he was surrounded by 5 muscular men, what kind of despair was this? I'm taking off my shirt to show you a big treasure. A sinister smile appeared on Emperor Ziwei's face as he approached Enlin. Enlin swallowed. Can I not look? How are you going to accept my gift if I don't look? Emperor Ziwei chuckled. Enlin's lips twitched. I have to do this to accept your gift? That's right. Emperor Ziwei nodded with excitement. Look closely, my big treasure. He abruptly took a deep breath and his muscles bulged. A dazzling purple divine light instantly enshrouded the entire celestial Dharch pavilion. Enlin turned toward Emperor Ziwei and was instantly dumbstruck. Chapter 1334. Enlin could see that there were countless purple stars on Emperor Ziwei's upper body, which were connected by the power of stars to form lines that covered his skin. These lines formed a starry sky formation that pulsed like a pulse. At the same time, his power had also reached an incredible level. This is my core buff mystic technique, Star Vein Divine Technique. It can use the power of stars to activate all of the latent potential within 1 minute without any side effect. What do you think? Isn't it awesome? Emperor Ziwei smiled. What do you think? It's awesome. Enlin nodded. At the same time, he was a little perplexed. Why was Emperor Ziwei taking off his clothes and using a buff mystic technique to ask him if it was awesome? This is my gift to you. I will use my divine Tao to completely imbue you with the Star Vein Divine Technique. Emperor Ziwei said with a smile. Enlin was completely dumbstruck this time, and he couldn't help but draw a sharp intake of breath. You're going to bestow your core inheritance to me? Enlin was given a massive fright. As far as he knew, no one in the entire celestial court had ever received a core spell technique bestowed by Emperor Ziwei himself to another immortal. Emperor Ziwei nodded. That's right. This is my gift to you. Enlin took a deep breath before bowing to express his gratitude. A Tao integration stage inheritance that was imbued with the power of the divine Tao was far more valuable than immortal tools and immortal pills. It could be said to be a priceless treasure. Just think about it, in this world, which supreme expert would be willing to teach the ability he was most skilled in to another person without any complaints or regrets? This wasn't just an issue of admiration and trust. Perhaps it was more of a type of expectation, trust, and heartfelt approval. Enlin understood now. Emperor Ziwei had most likely taken off his clothes so that he could see the true appearance of this spell technique. It had to be said, it really was very cool. In the future, when he used the Star Vein Divine Technique, he would also take off his clothes so that his enemies could see the veined patterns all over his body. This would make him look even more domineering and intimidating. Thus, bursts of powerful starry divine Tao light began to flow into Enlin's body. He had obtained Emperor Ziwei's core buff technique, Star Vein Divine Blast. Following that, the number 1 formation master of the 9 states, Emperor Chongqing, taught him the core spell technique, Formation Mist Ghost Hand. Array Fog Ghostly Hand, through devil-like techniques, allows one's own inherent array formation to be more flexible and changeable. After seeing through the enemy's array formation, one can also use the ghostly hand to make the array formation their own. Enlin was instantly ecstatic upon seeing this inheritance. With this ghostly formation mist hands combined with his divine inspection technique, what formation could possibly stop him? Eternal Emperor, formation fog ghostly hand, obtained. Emperor Qing Hua paused momentarily before replying. My powers are split into two types. The first is a core inheritance that focuses on wood-type life forms, which is known as the Wood Spirit Reincarnation Technique. The second is the Great Tao of Time that I attained through observing life and death. I wonder which one Enlin prefers? When Enlin heard this, he felt that it was definitely the Time Tao. It sounded really awesome. Then, a ding-dong sound came from the system. Detected that host has a chance to obtain a top-tier wood-type cultivation method. Now assigning the following special mission. Obtain Emperor Qing Hua's Wood Spirit Reincarnation Technique. Mission success. Cultivate the Evergreen Technique to the third stage. Mission failure. No penalty. Enlin faltered slightly upon seeing this system mission. He was currently at the second stage of the Evergreen Technique, which gave him the ability to regrow severed limbs. Now, he had a chance to cultivate it to the third stage. The ninth stage of the Wind Spirit Technique was the power of wind. Then, what would the ninth stage of the Evergreen Technique be? It had to be said, this was an extremely tempting prospect. If he could upgrade the system's cultivation method, then Enlin would definitely prioritize the system over the others. Furthermore, the system's nonchalant attitude towards failure of special missions infuriated Enlin even more. You're not going to force me to do it? Then I'm going to do it. Emperor Qing Hua, I choose the Wood Spirit Reincarnation Technique, Enlin said. A warm smile appeared on Emperor Qing Hua's face as his power of the divine Tao surged forth. Ah! Enlin's entire body was enshrouded in the light of the divine Tao, and he let loose a cry of elation. Ding dong! Congratulations, host! Your Evergreen Technique has been upgraded to the third stage. Immediately afterward, the true intent of the Evergreen Technique also surged into Enlin's body in a frenzy. Enlin let loose a loud cry as a green divine halo appeared above his head again. This halo was even brighter than Emperor Qing Hua's divine Tao light. All of the emperors were scared ****. What a dazzling green color! Enlin is so green! I can sense a boundless power of vitality from Enlin's divine halo. That's the paramount Tao of life. Emperor Qing Hua was also given a fright. Why does Enlin have a divine halo? Emperor Tian Huang was extremely perplexed. Mr. Enlin is quite scary. Could it be that he attained enlightenment from Qing Hua's power? The celestial Dharch speculated. This seemed to be the only plausible explanation at the moment. All of the emperors stared at Enlin with incredulity etched on their faces. They had lived for a long time, but they had never seen a freakish prodigy who could attain enlightenment on his own after receiving an inheritance. Soon, the inheritance concluded. Enlin recollected the wood-type reincarnation technique as well as the third stage of the Evergreen Technique with elation. His body had become extremely powerful, and even if his heart were to explode, he would still be able to live for 10 minutes. Not only that, but he had also attained extremely powerful healing abilities. Emperor Tian Huang was a lightning user, and his forte lay in chaotic divine lightning. He taught Enlin how to control chaotic divine lightning. This spell technique could only be learned by Enlin after he had attained spatial power. Enlin gladly accepted this. He was the heavenly lightning god, so there was nothing wrong with learning some bad *SS lightning technique. The celestial Dharch cultivated in a very special Tao, so there was no way he could teach Enlin. However, he could learn his omniscient eye. Once the omniscient eye was unleashed, he would be able to observe the heavens and observe the earth, thereby allowing him to understand the principles of all things. Thus, Enlin learned all of the techniques of the 5 emperors. Mr. Enlin has mastered all of the techniques of the 5 emperors of our celestial court. This is something that has never happened before. Come to think of it, It really is quite miraculous. Emperor Ziwei sighed with emotion. Ha ha. He has mastered all of the techniques of the 5 emperors and possesses extremely powerful combat prowess. It could be said that Mr. Enlin is the most powerful of all the war gods of the celestial court. Emperor Tian Huang chortled with glee. The celestial court is so fortunate. The celestial court is so fortunate. Qing Hua stroked his beard and heaved a long sigh. All of the emperors turned to look at Enlin with elation and admiration on their faces. They appeared to be even happier than if they had received the inheritance themselves. Alright, that's all for now. Let's get down to business. After a brief moment of elation, the celestial Dharch cut to the chase. Enlin, how about you tell us how you were able to defeat the heavenly wind god, and where your power comes from? The celestial Dharch asked. Ha ha ha. Enlin chuckled. I won't tell you. Chapter 1335. Enlin's tactful reply made the 5 emperors feel quite aggrieved. My apologies, I'll actually die if I use that super bad *SS power too much, Enlin explained. The 5 emperors nodded in agreement, clearly believing Enlin's explanation. Sigh, I wanted you to join the Heaven Mending sect. Mr. Enlin, you can tell me if you've made up your mind. If you join, there will always be a place for you in the Heaven Mending sect, the celestial Dharch said. The Heaven Mending sect was no secret among the 5 emperors, so the celestial Dharch immediately revealed its existence. Enlin nodded in response. The Heaven Crushing sect and Heaven Mending sect had both said that there would be a place for him. Why did they all think so highly of him? Now, let's talk about the heavenly wind god, the celestial Dharch said. Everyone's expressions became more solemn at the mention of the heavenly wind god. We've learned about Enlin's experiences in the West Sea, as well as the existence of the heavenly sea god and its plans. From the heavenly sea god and the heavenly wind god, we can learn that all of the representatives of the heavenly Tao are extremely hostile toward the human race, the celestial Dharch said in a slow voice. Emperor Tian Huang heaved a forlorn sigh. It's not as simple as that. It feels like they're going to wipe out our entire race. Emperor Ziwei shook his head. That's not necessarily the case. We know that all representatives of the heavenly Tao have their own independent consciousness. Is it possible that some of them aren't so hostile toward the human race? Emperor Chang Xing shook his head with a wry smile. Do you think the heavenly Tao will still think that way after the Purple Star incident? Emperor Ziwei was speechless. We have to prepare for the worst, Emperor Qing Hua said. Prepare for the worst? Are we going to treat the heavenly Tao as an enemy? Enlin asked. That's right. We don't have any other choice, do we? A resigned expression appeared on Emperor Qing Hua's face. They want to kill us, so we can only resist with our lives on the line. Actually, there are other options. The celestial Dharch offered a different opinion. The representatives of the heavenly Tao wanted to kill the human race because they felt that the human race posed a great threat to the stability of the world. Then we will make up for our past mistakes and make up for the flaws in the heavenly Tao. I believe that it will change its attitude from before. What the Celestial Emperor had said had always been the philosophy of the Heaven Mending sect. If the flaw in the sky wasn't fixed, not only was the human race going to suffer, all of the living beings in this world were going to suffer the same fate as the ancient Tai Chu realm. Mending the heavens. Emperor Tian Huang murmured to himself, that's way too unrealistic. I might as well just destroy all of the representatives of the heavenly Tao. Do you think a representative of the heavenly Tao can be chopped off just like that? The 5 of us can't even defeat one of them. The celestial Thearcha's face darkened. Then, for some reason, the great emperors turned to look at Enlin. Enlin! Big shots, why are you looking at me? Let's continue chatting. Ahem. What do you think, Mr. Enlin? The celestial Dharch asked in a gentle voice. All of the great emperors turned to look at Enlin with scorching eyes. Enlin was a little overwhelmed by the favor, and he trembled like a newbie. Great emperors, you're talking about mending the heavens and slashing the heavens. I don't know how to do either. He recoiled with an aggrieved expression. Don't mess around, Mr. Enlin. The celestial Dharch chuckled and said, I gave Ao Meng 1,000-year heavenly peach, and he told me everything that happened in the ancient Tai Chu dragon realm. Mending the heavens with a single sword strike. Bad *SS. You really are the fated person of our heaven-mending sect. The celestial Dharch gave Enlin a thumbs up as he spoke. Enlin's eyes widened. What the *CK? You're selling me off for 1,000-year heavenly peach? You're not even a *King plastic relative, are you? As for slashing the heavens, everyone in the celestial court knows about that. Mr. Enlin, you should just be more open about it. You know how to mend the heavens and slash the heavens. What's there to hide? Emperor Ziwei chuckled. Enlin had no choice but to pull out his evil-slaying sword. Little Xie, can you mend the heavens of the Tai Chu continent? Little Xie, I can't. Enlin was unwilling to give up. Why not? You can mend the heavens of the ancient Tai Chu dragon realm. The heavens of the ancient Tai Chu dragon realm were shattered due to an external force forcibly opening up the passageway between the two worlds. However, the flaw of the Tai Chu continent is that the heavenly Tao is incomplete, so the two are completely different concepts. Little Xie's childish voice sounded. See, I really don't know how to mend the heavens. Enlin sheathed his evil-slaying sword and splayed his hands open in resignation. He had thought that the 5 emperors would be a little disappointed upon hearing this. Unexpectedly, the celestial Thearcha's eyes immediately lit up. Good. As expected of the war god of the celestial court, he can indeed mend the heavens. Enlin. Mending the structure is mending the heavenly Tao is also mending. Now that you can mend the structure, why can't you mend the heavenly Tao? What if it's possible in the future? The celestial Dharch asked excitedly. Emperor Qinghua stroked his long beard and chuckled. Ha, congratulations. Mr. Enlin is able to make a special contribution to the heavens, but we have no way of doing so. Mending the heavens was like speaking. If you could speak the Taichu language now, then you would have a chance to learn the ancient man language. We're different. We're mutes. Wonderful! Amazing! The celestial court is fortunate. Enlin, you're awesome. The great Thearchs couldn't stop praising him. Enlin was astonished. He really had to hand it to Su Xiaolan. However, Enlin didn't say anything or try to argue with her. Perhaps, when one was in despair and unable to find a way out, it was not a bad thing to have such hope and hope. By the way, the Wind Demon Tribe trial has concluded. Emperor Ziwei said, we can confirm that they are life forms that the heavenly wind god nurtured outside the Tai Chu continent. Even though they are powerful beings nurtured by the heavenly wind god, those life forms originally existed on the same planet. Enlin understood. To put it simply, the heavenly wind god is recruiting underlings. That's right, the heavenly wind god is a god in their eyes. Most importantly, those underlings weren't weakened by the power of the Tai Chu continent. Emperor Ziwei spoke with a solemn expression. Enlin's expression stirred upon hearing this. This was very important information. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial boss created by the heavenly sea god was originally meant to destroy the human race, but it was slain before it even made it out of the West Sea. The main reason for this tragedy was that the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's power was severely restricted by the heavenly Tao after entering the Tai Chu continent. Did that mean that all powerful beings that weren't created by the representatives of the heavenly Tao wouldn't be weakened? Even though the heavenly wind god's power has been restricted by the heavenly Tao, it's not as powerful as it was in the past. This is something that we should be wary of, the celestial Dharch continued. Everyone's hearts became heavy upon hearing this. Obviously, a sense of crisis loomed over their heads, as if a storm was brewing. After that, the celestial Dharch explained the arrangements that had been made to deal with the changes in the world. After making all the necessary arrangements, Unlin bade farewell and departed. By the way, all of you have things to do. Do I need to do anything? Unlin suddenly remembered that the celestial Dharch hadn't made any arrangements for him. Mr. Unlin, just let nature take its course. After all, there's no point in rushing things. The celestial Dharch waved farewell at Unlin. Goodbye. Unlin was very pleased with this. Unlin smiled. Goodbye. Their short conversation was over, and he was about to embark on a new life. Chapter 1336. Unlin flew back to Xiaoxian United University atop his brick. The reconstruction of the university was progressing at an extremely fast pace. Not only did the construction of the immortal world focus on its appearance, but it also placed more emphasis on its feng shui and spiritual aura. How to construct a building that was more compatible with all things and how to gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth were the two most important aspects of the construction of the immortal world. Unlin flew along the way and saw the floating continent enshrouded in immortal energy from afar. It was a pity that this continent was already in a state of devastation after a massive battle. Huh? Where are the snow mountains? Unlin discovered that the divine mountain that pierced into the heavens had disappeared, as had the smaller snow mountains. All that was left were craters and massive black cracks. All of a sudden, he caught sight of a shiny golden object on the ground in the distance. The massive shell exuded an inhuman golden light. Its skin was translucent and as flawless as white jade. Its antennae were pointed toward the sky, and its eyes were cold and emotionless, as if it were a god looking down upon all living beings. Its extremely powerful aura exuded an aura of dominance, as if it were declaring that it was the king of this world. What a maverick snail! Unlin flew over on his brick with excitement in his eyes. Holy Lord Tian Wu, Grandmaster Construction Cultivator. That's right, these were the most moneybags on the entire Tai Chu continent. Holy Lord Tian Wu and Grandmaster Construction Cultivator. Holy Lord Tian Wu was munching on all types of construction materials, and he raised his eyes at the sight of the approaching Unlin. Hi, poor cultivator. Unlin almost threw up a mouthful of blood. Is that how you greet someone? But that seems to be the only label in my heart. Holy Lord Tian shook his head with an extremely honest expression. Unlin decided to be magnanimous and not bicker with a vulgar snail who only cared about money. Unlin, you've come at the right time. I finally know why you're so poor. A woman in a red robe made her way over to him, revealing her long, slender legs. Below her collar, her perky, snowy white breasts were extremely eye-catching. That's right, the F-Class Grandmaster Construction Cultivator had arrived. Unlin asked curiously, why do you say so? The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator pointed at the whale not far away and said angrily, that's the whale. It's 2F** King Stingy. I asked for 50 million for a casual ride, but it cut me down to 35 million. With such a stingy principal, how could his students not be poor? Serves him right for turning into a whale. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator was very angry. Her pretty face was slightly flushed, her chest was heaving up and down. Unlin was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. He didn't mind the woman's ridicule and asked, so you can still bargain? Isn't it a fixed price? The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator was fuming with rage. After a while, she explained, Wang Xianyu is a Dao integration stage super mighty figure, and I've done business with him in the past, so I've listed him as a high-ranking member. That's why I was able to negotiate with him. That's quite a hefty price cut. Unlin was a little tempted. He also wanted to bargain with her, so he put on a bashful smile. Ms. Lin Sinew, seeing as we're good friends, how much discount can I get from an ordinary ride at the 4-9 Immortal Sect? TCH. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator rolled her eyes. 30 million spirit stones, non-negotiable. Don't try to take advantage of me. I'm only giving Wang Xianyu a discount to save face for the Celestial Court. After all, the Celestial Court is in dire straits and can't come up with any money in a short time. Tens of thousands of teachers and students are homeless, and the 5 emperors are in seclusion. This is an extremely difficult situation. As a humanitarian matter, I can still lower my standards. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator's expression became more and more strained as she spoke. That's what the principal said when he was bargaining with you, right? Unlin asked. The Grandmaster Construction Cultivator. The woman pursed her lips and nodded with an aggrieved expression as an expression of humiliation appeared on her face. Unlin praised Wang Xianyu in his mind. What a good bargain! It was quite clear that Li Xinyu had also been tricked. He then turned toward the little whale, only to discover that the little whale was blowing bubbles with a bored expression as it looked up into the sky at a 45-degree angle. I've finished the construction materials, and I'm ready to start. In order to repair the entire floating continent, please get away from here, Holy Lord Tian was said. Wang Xianyu immediately evacuated everyone upon hearing this. All of the teachers and students had already been relocated to a certain temporary shelter in the Celestial Court, so the evacuation process was very quick. All they had to do was chase away a few spectating students. Whoosh! Holy Lord Tian was golden snail shell tremored violently, and it shone with a golden light as bright as the sun. A golden light of the divine Tao erupted forth in a frenzy, extending as far as the eye could see. Unlin stood in midair, and was astonished after using his divine sense to survey his surroundings. He discovered that Holy Lord Tian was light of the divine Tao encompassed an area of tens of thousands of square kilometers. Was this something that a Tao integration stage super mighty figure could do? Li Xinyu's body rose into the air, and she stomped a foot into the air, upon which invisible ripples proliferated forth and fused into heaven and earth. Heaven and earth, spirit dream bridge. The huge snail shook its turtle shell frantically, as if it was stirring something. 2 realms substitution, divine materialization. Ah! The shattered earth was stitched back together by a burst of power, and flowers and trees began to sprout from the barren land. Mountains, rivers, and beautiful lakes reappeared on the campus. The beautiful full moon mountain, the peculiar forest of 1,000 peaks, the picturesque maple leaf gallery. Not only that, but there was also a new snow mountain over 100,000 feet in the back of the campus. Unlin clicked his tongue in wonder. So this snow mountain hasn't been moved. PFFF PFFF PFFF, glug glug glug. Holy Lord Tian continued to twist and contort his body, and a series of beautiful and brand new school buildings appeared, as well as a series of intricately crafted little pavilions. I was a little worried at first, but it looks like everything is still the same. A gentle, pleasant voice sounded beside him. Unlin turned to discover a beautiful woman in a jade dress who was also looking at him with a smile on her face. Her clear eyes were full of warmth and light, and they were very mesmerizing to look at. Xiaolan, you're here to look at the buildings as well? Unlin was a little elated. No, I'm here to see you. Su Xiaolan cocked her head to the side, and a faint smile appeared on her face. Unlin's heart trembled slightly, and he felt as if he had been flirted with. The sun gradually disappeared into the clouds, and the sea of clouds surged like waves. There were also golden clouds floating around the campus, and a few snowy white celestial cranes flew through the air, letting loose ethereal cries from time to time. This was the main theme of this moment. Hey! Unlin, look over there! Su Xiaolan patted Unlin's shoulder with all her might as she pointed in a certain direction. Unlin turned around, and an unforgettable scene appeared before his eyes, causing him to freeze in place. Chapter 1337. To the west of Xiuxian United University's floating continent. The sun had charred the sea of clouds into a golden hue, and the floating continent was like a floating island within a sea of golden clouds. As the clouds surged, bursts of iridescent light began to emerge from the clouds, as if they had been affected by the vital energy fluctuations in the surrounding area. The iridescent light was constantly changing colors, creating an extremely dazzling sight that instantly enshrouded the entire sky. The golden iridescent light was dazzling and eye-catching, the red iridescent light was as vibrant as fire, and the purple iridescent light was dreamy and illusionary. Lin and Su Xiaolan were situated in a fantastical world, and everything that was unfolding before their eyes seemed so surreal. However, their senses and the cries of astonishment around them, all of these indicated that everything before their eyes was real. It's said that there's an extremely rare phenomenon in the university known as the boundless rainbow sky. And Lin, I feel like we're very lucky. Su Xiaolan extended a slender hand and gripped tightly onto Lin's hand with an excited expression on her face. Lin came to his senses from Su Xiaolan's words. He recalled that when he had first arrived at the United University of Cultivation, he had been imprisoned for fighting with Liu Debao, and when he had first been released, he had been filled with anticipation and fantasies about the boundless rainbow sky at the sight of the sun setting over the sea of clouds. He had been thinking about how great it would be if he could witness such a spectacular spectacle one day. Who would have thought that his dream would come true today? And who would have thought that celestial maiden Xiaolan, whom he had once thought to be out of his reach, would now voluntarily hold onto his hand? And Lin was struck by a sense of bliss as he felt the warmth from Xiaolan's soft, almost boneless hand. The iridescent light shone upon the sea of clouds before transforming the golden sea of clouds into a rainbow color. This was a very peculiar scene. The iridescent light extended all the way from the direction where the sun had sunk into the sea of clouds, and heaven and earth seemed to have been dyed in a layer of vibrant colors. A brand new university was being rebuilt amid this spectacular spectacle. Hey, and Lin, what are you doing? Su Xiaolan let loose a cry of surprise. Let's go play in the clouds. And Lin held onto Su Xiaolan's hand as they flew toward the sea of clouds with excitement. Cloud fortification. Boom! The splendid clouds within a radius of 10 miles suddenly froze, turning into a soft and bouncy solid object. And Lin and Su Xiaolan plunged headfirst into the layer of clouds, and they were then sent flying into the sky by the rebounding force of the clouds. Oh, we're flying so high. And Lin held Su Xiaolan's hand as they were thrown into the sky by the cloud. Haha, it's so fun. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but laugh heartily. The two of them felt like they were playing on a trampoline. The setting sun, the colorful clouds, the evening glow, and the endless sounds of laughter and quarreling. This was in Lin and Su Xiaolan's memories of the magnificent seven-colored clouds. The next day, a brand new campus appeared in front of tens of thousands of teachers and students. Wow, what a nostalgic campus! It's been a few days since we last saw each other. What? I thought I'd never be able to go back to my old campus. Who would have thought that it would be restored to its original state, and it's been rebuilt way too quickly. I'm starting to wonder if this is an illusion. Tears welled up in the eyes of many students, and Lin sighed with emotion. He knew that this was what made the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator and Holy Lord Tian was so bad *SS. When it came to construction, they were definitely the cream of the crop. Not only was the construction period extremely short, but they also possessed all types of mysterious and unpredictable methods. Prior to their departure, the Grandmaster Construction Cultivator, Li Xinyu, gave Lin a black card, telling him that Lin already had the right to become a high-ranking member of her sect. As long as he activated the card, she would immediately provide services to him. Normally, only Dao integration stage super mighty figures with whom one had a long-term relationship could become a high-ranking member. The fact that Lin had received this card indicated that he held a very high status in Li Xinyu's eyes. Lin looked at the black card and thought to himself that he was going to invite Li Xinyu over to help them build more beautiful buildings in the future when the sect was rich. The 4-9 Immortal sect was quite small, and they only had 3 million spirit stones for a casual visit. However, they had only chosen the lowest level of services due to their lack of financial resources. With their current financial resources, Unlin would be able to get the sect to do a simple visit. However, he wasn't willing to give up. He was going to give them the best. He was going to get Li Xinyu to do some serious work the next time they visited. It was only 300 million spirit stones. He was sure that he would have that much money in the near future. Unlin's heart was filled with ambition, and he continued to live like a salted fish. Xiao Hong was even more of a salted fish than he was. She sat on the windowsill every day, singing and photosynthesizing, and another day passed by. Apparently, she was already at the soul formation intermediate stage. Xianyuan Cheng and Su Qianyun both had a mental breakdown upon hearing this news. In the past, it was Enlin and Su Xiaolan who had dealt them a heavy blow, but now they were being dealt a heavy blow by Xiao Hong. What was going on in this world? Thinking back, when we first met, I was only at the spirit nurturing stage, and Xiao Hong wasn't even at the spirit nurturing stage. What has she done now? Why is her cultivation base progressing so much faster than mine? Xianyuan Cheng had been dealt a fatal blow. Su Qianyun had tears in her eyes. Why is Xiao Hong so outstanding? We're the ones who are secretly attending tutoring sessions. Am I that stupid, sunbathing and idling toward the pinnacle of their lives made the two top-rate prodigies of the United University of Cultivation realize the unfairness of the heavenly Tao and their own weakness? This was another motivation that motivated them to cultivate. Enlin was also quite happy to see them suffer such a heavy blow. After all, the path of cultivation was one where one didn't advance or fall behind. If they had a goal to pursue, it would be easier for them to tap into their latent potential. Life was quite peaceful. Before they knew it, another 2 months had passed. As usual, Enlin lay on the roof of his dorm room and looked up at the stars at night. The 2 bright moons in the sky shone upon each other, looking so pure and flawless. Giant Enlin, why can't there be 2 moons in this world at the same time? Who set the rule of 1 sun and 1 moon? In the divine mirror world, it can have as many moons as I want it to have, Tina huffed as she sat on Enlin's shoulder. Her domineering side as a goddess was on full display. That's the difference between the original and the replica. Enlin smiled. Think about it, where did you get your knowledge of the moon from? Here. Tina replied. Hence, the moon on the Tai Chu continent is the original and most authentic moon. Even if you create a moon in the divine mirror world, it's still based on the moon on the Tai Chu continent, so it's a replica. No matter how many moons there are in other places, the moon on the Tai Chu continent is born from chaos, and it's a unique moon. Enlin explained. Tina nodded with an enlightened expression. Giant Enlin, I have a bold idea. Do you think the replica I create can replace the original moon on the Tai Chu continent after it becomes extremely powerful? That's a question. Enlin hesitated momentarily before looking up into the sky with a smile. You should ask that person in the sky. In the sky? Tina looked up into the sky. Beneath the bright, white moon, a peerlessly beautiful woman was stepping on a sky full of stars as she approached. Chapter 1338. The woman wore a moon-white silk dress, which rippled under the moonlight like a divine lotus blooming in the night sky. Her features were exquisite and flawless, and her skin was as translucent as white jade, as clear as the moonlight. Under the moonlight she was a true goddess, peerlessly beautiful. She was the #1 beauty of the celestial court, Fairy Chang'e. Enlin clicked his tongue in wonder. I've long heard of the legend of Chang'e flying to the moon, but I've always regretted not being able to see it with my own eyes. Who would have thought that I wouldn't be able to see Chang'e flying to the moon today, but Chang'e falling to the moon instead? The goddess under the moonlight landed lightly beside Enlin, bringing with her a refreshing fragrance. If one took a closer sniff, they could even smell the faint fragrance of osmanthus. Unlin, have you smelled enough? Chang'e's voice was cold as she glanced at Unlin with a hint of disdain, as if to say, look at you. Haha. Welcome to the mortal realm, palace leader Chang'e. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. Unlin greeted her with a cheerful smile. Seeing Unlin's cheeky smile, Chang'e could only pout in resignation. How could I dare to guide the god of war of the celestial court? I'm just an ordinary fairy born to toil. All right, let's stop teasing each other. Speaking of which, why did you come to find me? Unlin asked curiously. In his memory, this was the first time Chang'e had taken the initiative to find him. A smile appeared on Chang'e's beautiful face. Why don't you take a guess? Unlin blinked. You're here to deliver a divine pill, right? Chang'e, you guessed right. The woman was a little disappointed. Why wasn't the plot as she had imagined? Wasn't it supposed to be Unlin guessing wrong a few times and begging her pitifully so that she would be merciful enough to announce the answer? How did he get it right the first time? Haha, Chang'e, you're amazing. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Unlin jumped up excitedly and couldn't help but cheer loudly. Congratulations, giant Unlin. You finally have a chance to progress to the Return to Void stage. Tina was also very happy, and she ran around Unlin with a wide smile. Chang'e pulled out a divine pill from her storage ring. As soon as the divine elixir appeared, a 7-colored divine light soared into the sky. An extremely powerful divinity surged like waves, causing even Unlin to feel a sense of apprehension. This is the Rainbow Divine Tao Pill? An expression of elation appeared on Unlin's face. All of a sudden, the divine pill tremored violently, as if it was trying to struggle free from Chang'e's grasp. Hurry up and refine it with a drop of blood. Only after becoming its master will you have the right to eat it. Chang'e urged in an urgent voice. Unlin accepted the dazzling divine pill from Chang'e's gentle hand before releasing a drop of blood essence onto the divine pill. The divine pill tremored violently before lying down obediently in Unlin's palm. A translucent 7-colored dress appeared from the divine elixir and wrapped around the white body of the elixir. The elixir's body was white and smooth, and the dress looked like a misty dream. At first glance, it looked like a fairy wearing a colorful dress. The divine pill lowered its head in embarrassment upon seeing its master looking at it. Oh, it didn't have a head. Instead, its round body leaned down slightly. Oh, right, eat this immortal pill before taking the Rainbow Divine Tao Pill. Otherwise, you're going to become Celestial Maiden Unlin. Chang'e handed an immortal pill to Unlin. Unlin accepted it with a grateful expression. The side effects of the Rainbow Divine Tao Pill were extremely terrifying. If one was not careful, the rainbow dress on the divine pill would latch onto Unlin's body, and he wouldn't be able to get rid of it no matter what. I really don't understand what kind of divine pill you're going to take to progress to the Return to Void stage. Could it be that you're really the Pill Dao Patriarch that Ishi was talking about, and you've reached the pinnacle of Pill Dao cultivation? Chang'e asked with a confused expression. Unlin almost threw up a mouthful of blood upon hearing this. Pill Dao Patriarch, my F***King F***King sh**T? Pill Dao cultivation? That's like giving me a title. Don't listen to that fatso. I'm only eating this divine pill to celebrate my progress to the Return to Void stage, Unlin explained. Chang'e, why do I feel like you're spouting nonsense? Even Chang'e, who had a cold and aloof personality, couldn't help but roll her eyes at Unlin. Who was this guy trying to fool? Unlin had no choice. He couldn't tell Unlin that he had to consume a divine pill and use a divine tool to progress to the Return to Void stage, could he? No one would believe him even if he did. By the way, when are you progressing to the Return to Void stage? I want to join in the fun. Chang'e asked with a smile. Unlin was a little surprised. This was the first time he had seen Chang'e so concerned about someone else's affairs. Of course, Su Qianyun was an exception, but this was still quite surprising. Was this still the scholarly otaku that he knew? I'm transcending my tribulation at noon tomorrow, Unlin replied. Alright, see you tomorrow then. A warm smile appeared on Chang'e's face. Her smile was very, very beautiful, and it dazzled the onlookers under the moonlight. Even Unlin, who was used to seeing celestial maidens, couldn't help but be slightly dazed by her smile. See you tomorrow. You have to come. With Big Sister Chang'e's help, my tribulation transcendence chances will increase by at least 1 level. Unlin was full of enthusiasm. Alright, stop joking around. I'm off. Chang'e stepped forward, and her body was as light as a feather as she flew toward the bright moon in the sky. Her white dress danced like a white lotus flower. The moonlight shimmered, and a silvery white divine light fell from the sky. Her beautiful figure gradually shrank before disappearing under the moonlight. Unlin raised his head and stared silently at the image of Chang'e flying toward the moon. This dreamlike scene made him feel extremely infatuated and satisfied, and he felt as if he had achieved another dream in his life. Tonight, he had seen both Chang'e setting the moon and Chang'e flying toward the moon. It was a very fulfilling night. Unlin couldn't help but turn his gaze toward the divine pill in his hand. He was feeling a little touched. Chang'e had personally delivered this divine pill from the moon. This was a clear indication of her attitude toward him. Chang'e, I won't disappoint you. Also, the Rainbow Divine Tao Pill. You're a divine pill personally refined by Chang'e, so you can't disappoint me. Unlin spoke to the divine pill in his hand with a smile. The divine pill seemed to have heard Unlin's words, and its body shuddered slightly as it recoiled slightly in shyness. The divine pill is so adorable, must you eat it, Jianan? Tina asked with a hint of sympathy in her eyes. Edible divine pills are adorable. No one likes divine pills that can't be eaten, Unlin retorted mercilessly. This was a very realistic statement. Divine pills that couldn't be eaten would only drive people crazy. They didn't refine them with painstaking effort just to look at them. The next morning, a piece of news instantly swept through the entire university like a hurricane. Less than 2 hours later, outside of Panlong Mountain, the tallest mountain in Xiaoxian United University, there was a vast crowd gathered here. Almost all of the teachers and students of the university were gathered here. They were all here for one reason, and that was to watch Unlin transcend his tribulation to the return to void stage. Chapter 1339. The few tribulations that Unlin and his pet beast had undergone were all at Xiaoxian United University. The school's attitude toward this matter had also changed from laissez-faire to encouraging spectators. It had to be said that the school's attitude had changed quite a bit. Their trust in Unlin was actually higher than ever. The teachers were already busily arranging for their students to observe the tribulation. Come, come, come. Everyone, stand in an orderly manner on the defensive formation set up by the teacher to avoid being affected by the aftermath of the tribulation. Students, please take a good look at how student Unlin transcends the tribulation. Watch more, learn more, comprehend the intent, and learn from his unyielding spirit to fight against the heavens. Only then will you be able to grow and improve. In ancient times, there was a fated sword immortal who watched Unlin transcend the tribulation and enter the returning to void stage. Today, all of you will also have the opportunity to benefit greatly from watching Unlin transcend the tribulation. The teachers were either encouraging or instructing the students on the ground. Spectating a tribulation wasn't an opportunity every year, and watching Unlin transcend the tribulation was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Be it the teachers or the students, they were all extremely excited and looking forward to it. Some fangirls had even pulled up banners and shouted Unlin's name, cheering for his tribulation transcendence. Unlin stood at the peak of Mount Panlong in his elegant white robe. Pitter-patter, firecrackers were set off in the distance. Bam bam bam, bam 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 in the sky, dazzling vital energy fireworks decorated the clear blue sky. Lin stared speechlessly at the scene before him. As he looked at the adorable students cheering for him in the distance, the corners of his lips couldn't help but twitch. I'm undergoing a solemn and sacred tribulation transcendence that concerns human lives. Why are you guys making it look like a festival? What's going on? Tribulation transcendence is very tense and serious. I'm not here to teach you. Although he kept complaining in his heart, he gradually calmed down when he saw so many people personally coming here to cheer for him. Not far away, his pet team, Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Qing, and Su Qianyun were also cheering for him. Seeing these familiar faces, he felt a sense of happiness. So what if the tribulation is terrifying? With these companions by my side, I have nothing to fear. Meanwhile, in the distance there was a cloud in the sky. Above the white cloud were all the immortals of the heavenly court, and they were all waiting for Lin's tribulation transcendence. As long as they didn't have any missions to perform, they would all rush over. Even the former war god of the heavenly court, Erlang Shen Yangjian, who was in seclusion not long ago, stood among the immortals with his majestic black hound. Forget about Erlang Shen. Even Lin was probably as popular as one of the 5 emperors of the celestial court. Who wouldn't want to come and watch such a celebrity transcend his tribulation? Setting aside Erlang Shen, even Lin's prestige was comparable to that of the 5 heavenly court emperors. Who wouldn't want to witness such a celebrity's tribulation transcendence? However, they were up in the clouds, where no one could see them, sipping tea and chatting as they waited for Lin's tribulation transcendence. Mr. Lin's last soul formation stage tribulation drew upon him a golden void lightning, and it was a mutated golden void lightning at that. That's something that even return to void stage mighty figures don't have. Now that he's transcending a tribulation to the return to void stage, I wonder what kind of trouble he's going to cause. The celestial Dharch was both elated and concerned. Now that he's transcending his tribulation to the return to void stage, I really don't know what he's going to do next. He was concerned that Lin wouldn't be able to survive this tribulation transcendence. He was concerned that Lin wouldn't be able to survive this tribulation transcendence. He was already so freakish last time. Just thinking about this time was terrifying. Don't worry, that little brat has a lot of tricks up his sleeves. He'll definitely be fine. Emperor Ziwei was extremely confident in Lin. Right at this moment, cries of surprise erupted from the crowd outside Pan Long Mountain. My God! How could there be such a beautiful celestial maiden in this world? Who is she? I feel like I've fallen in love. Crap, my Tao heart has become unstable. Tens of thousands of teachers and students stared up into the sky with dumbstruck expressions. There, a woman in a white dress descended from the sky. Divine light danced around her like a fairy, as if she were a rainbow ribbon draped over her body. She was an exquisitely beautiful woman who had descended from the heavens. Chang'e. She's Chang'e. She's holding a rabbit in her arms. That's right, she really is Chang'e. Who would have thought that she would be so much more beautiful in person? When the heavenly wind god was battling, I couldn't see it clearly from afar. Now that I can see it clearly, I feel like I'm about to suffocate. I've heard that celestial maiden Chang'e's whereabouts are very elusive and unworldly. Who would have thought that she would come to observe senior student Lin's tribulation transcendence? How can senior student Lin's tribulation transcendence be a mundane affair? It's the most important event in the world. Some of the retarded fans immediately retorted. It had to be said, Chang'e's arrival created quite a stir. Chang'e descended from the sky and spread open her arms. Lin's heart stirred, and he felt extremely flattered. She was far too enthusiastic. This was a sudden blessing, and he instinctively spread open his arms. Then, Chang'e and Su Qianyun embraced each other. Lin, big sister Chang'e, there are so many people watching. Su Qianyun blushed as she spoke in a mellow voice beside Lin. I'm used to it. What, you don't like my hugs anymore? A smile appeared on Chang Yi's face, and her eyes were filled with countless emotions. No, no. Su Qianyun shook her head vehemently. Lin put down his arms awkwardly and cleared his throat. You guys can step back for now. I'm going to officially begin my tribulation transcendence. Why are you two flaunting your love around me while I'm transcending my tribulation? Go, Lin! Su Xiaolan hugged Lin as she spoke in a gentle voice of encouragement. Lin basked in her warm embrace, and his discomfort from being fed dog food was alleviated. Don't worry, Xiaolan, I'm invincible today. Lin was very excited. Master, I'm looking forward to the day you shatter the heavens. Shui Zhantian was also very excited. Big brotherin, I'll be waiting for you to come back for frying pan hot pot. Dabai stuck out his tongue as he encouraged Lin, as if he was already fantasizing about his blissful hot pot dinner that night. Chang Yi also held on to Su Qianyun's hand as she retreated with a smile. Go, this is the first time I'm cheering for someone else's tribulation transcendence, so you have to do your best. Lin drew his divine tool, evil-slaying sword, and pulled out a divine pill that glowed with a brilliant divine light. In that instant, he became the most dazzling being between heaven and earth. I've attained phenomenal success in my metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, yin and yang cultivation method. With the evil-slaying sword by my side and the divine pill by my side, let's see how I progress to the return to void stage. Step into the heavens and seek the Tao.